Okay, so we are live. How's it going, fellas?
Doing well, thank you.
It's going real well. How is everyone tonight?
So thank you both for joining me. Big fan of your guys' channel. We had a chance. I like impromptu hopped on your channel maybe a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure
Yeah, two,
what it
three
is
weeks
now.
ago.
Yeah,
I think we
something
ended
of
up
that
talking
sort.
for like 6-7 hours that night or some just crazy long conversation. It was super fun. But even before that, you guys are very just nice, friendly, nerdy guys like myself who just love who love this pop culture stuff.
Yeah,
I think that so many people who really love and enjoy my channel are real hardcore collectors and just love learning about new things. So I think bringing on two guys who have a wealth of knowledge in Marvel cards will be a cool change of pace from what we often do on the channel. And I think you guys watching will really, if you don't know these guys' personalities, you'll really enjoy them, and they're both just very friendly, nice guys who openly share, great helppful information and have done a lot to build, I think, and continue to sort of build out the Marvel card community. So it's really appreciate you guys taking the time to be on my channel, and I think we'll just like have a lot of fun tonight looking at Marvel cards. I think people will probably learn a lot tonight, because there's probably a lot of people here, including myself, who definitely don't have a ton of Marvel card knowledge, or in some cases like any Marvel card knowledge. So
right.
it'll be cool maybe to give a little bit of a, where should they start?
Yeah.
If they're interested, all the different options from like those high price Grail chases to stuff that maybe is a little bit less pricey, a little bit easier to find, all that type of stuff. So
Definitely.
we'll get into all of that, but if you guys could just start maybe by just briefly introducing yourselves a little bit about your journey in the Marvel card hobby. Please plug your YouTube channel a little bit and all that stuff, and we'll get into it.
I'm always introducing Manu, so it's his time to do the introduction.
Oh my gosh, I'm going first. Or no, I get the pleasure of introducing Justin. No, I guess I'll go first. I'll let Justin speak for himself. So my name is Manu. Hello, everybody. It's nice to be here. Jake, thank you so much for having me on, like having us on. But yeah, that conversation we had was phenomenal. I'm not on YouTube. Well, I'm not on YouTube under this name, the 9.9 Newsstand, but I do pop up every Tuesday night at this same time, actually, on Justin's channel, Spideyhits. And we've been going 35 weeks. We talk all things Marvel, but on Instagram, you can find me at the 9.9 Newsstand. And so I am a 90s collector of Marvel cards and comics. And as a result of that, sort of all things related in that sense, like pop culture related to 90s nostalgia. Um, yeah, and nostalgia is kind of my motivation, right? Like those are the things that I hunt the most, look for, and obviously a lot of things were mass produced in the 90s, so we look for whatever makes it more scarce, right? The highest grade, an error, things of that sort. So I get kind of deep in a very narrow lane, if that's a decent way to put it. I don't collect everything, and I go I get really dedicated for the items that I do go after, and tend to amass quite a few of those things. And so I guess tonight we're going to show a little bit of that stuff as well. And then yeah, but I'm a little bit comics, a little bit cards, a couple of magazines that we're going to discuss tonight, and I'll let Justin take it from there.
Absolutely. I'm Justin. I go by Spidey in the nerd world that I live in. I have the Spidey Hits YouTube channel, Spidey Hits Instagram account, Spidey Hits Discord, a few things like that. I collect a lot of things that are Marvel, but predominantly it is Marvel cards, Marvel trading cards. But there is, I don't know, about 1,500 action figures around me with a particular emphasis on Marvel Legends. I collect Marvel comic books as well. But again, Marvel cards is the emphasis of the channel and the social media platforms. And you know why Jake has us here tonight. And the world is a better and healthier place with pollination. So here we are, we're cross-pollinating here across two communities. And I think it's going to be good for both Pokemon collectors and Marvel card collectors.
Yeah, and I'm nervous. Okay, that's it.
You got that out, huh?
I'm one of those people, and I see Swami's here as well, that like
What up?
we really like, I like the Marvel franchise a lot. I like the DC franchise. I love Harry Potter, Dragon Ball Z, all sorts of animes, Pokemon. Like I have a wide variety of things that I really enjoy. What are you guys sort of, you were saying, Manu, that you you know, maybe a little bit of that also from like a different 90s things, different 90s kind of like IPs that you like.
Yeah. So, oh, sorry. Yeah.
What else do you guys like other than Marvel, or what else are you guys into, or is it you know, mainly just Marvel, or what would you say about that?
That's actually a really good question. I'm like I said, I'm so narrow in sort of like my interest. It's kind of like, wow, that's Justin's gonna have a much more
Oh,
fun time
he's a
answering this
collecting
question.
snob. Let's go ahead and get it out of the way.
I'm a collecting snob, right? Like, but like I'm super like symbiote oriented. That's the black suit Spider-Man and Venom, you know, all of
Yeah.
the symbiote related things. And as an artist, Todd McFarlane, many of us are familiar with him. I'm sort of obsessed with him. So all things kind of in that lane. See, in the 90s for me, there were a lot of things that were really popular that didn't find me. You know, like this isn't going to be the most popular thing to say here, but Pokemon didn't find me. You know, rest in peace, Power Rangers didn't find me. You know, a lot of things that are so significant right now, and it's fun to treasure hunt in those realms. There's value there. There's
Manu, did you just
you know,
bury
I've
Power
got
Rangers?
a couple Power Rangers boxes up there.
yeah, no, but no, one of the one of the main
Jason,
actors,
yeah.
yeah, and so and but you know, there are still Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is something that did speak to me, though, you know, and I can pull out a couple of items from that IP, Jurassic Park. So there are things that really worked for me, and then a lot of things that missed me. And a few of the things that missed me didn't really miss the rest of the world because they're kind of huge, you know. But yeah, so that's a little bit of that.
Yeah. How
Yeah,
about
for
for
me,
you?
the only other like collectible that I'll touch is Star Wars. I'm a huge fan of Star Wars, the IP, especially related to the books and the movies and the shows on Disney Plus. Not all of them, but most of them. I have quite a few Star Wars action figures, quite a few Star Wars comic books, very few Star Wars trading cards. I will open Star Wars when I'm out of Marvel cards. I'll dabble in it. It's still a little fun, but it's not something I collect or pursue on a regular basis.
So what attracts you guys to Marvel? Big
Ooh.
question.
Justin, you go ahead and go. I've been going first. You go. You go.
So the what attracts me to it is the history that I have with it. I mean, for me, Marvel goes back to a very young age. You start around 91, 92. I was born in 83. I'm 39 years old. So, you know, right in that, sweet spot of Marvel trading cards. You have the animated series of Spider-Man and X-Men, which is just indelible in my life and made a huge impact on me as a kid. You couple that with the trading cards, the action figures, the comic books during that season of 91, 92, all the way to 96. 96, I'm 13 years old. I discover female. And at that point in time, my interests shift dramatically. I kind of put Marvel stuff in a very small space in my teenage life where I basically would draw them and read some, but it wasn't like a big pursuit for me. And at the same time, 96, I think, is when Pokemon really started showing up in the United States. Is that right?
That's when the base set came in Japan.
Came
So
in
it was
Japan.
a little bit more, yeah, 98, 99, 2000 was sort of like
So-
the big boom, the big
So
boom.
anything anime for me felt like it was actually in competition and conflict with Marvel. And so I just kind of stiff armed it really hard. Whether it was my friends or even, in art class when people were drawing anime, I was still drawing Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Venom. And that continued until about 19, long story short, get married, have a kid. And, I'm not even collecting very heavily until about 2016. And that's whenever I started collecting Marvel again. And then 2021 is actually when I started collecting Marvel trading cards at the level that I am today.
Right. Right. That's actually really fascinating, Jake. Like, I didn't realize that Pokemon sort of introduced itself here domestically at the same time where like Marvel and the other sort of collecting was collapsing, essentially. And so, much like Justin, you know, I had discovered some of the other things a teenager would start to discover, and I was a bit distracted from my collecting ways that I can't really identify what my thought process was or why I fell in love with the things that I did between the ages of, let's say, 6 and 12, when you just kind of go where go, like,
Mm.
it's just your heart and eyes pull you. But there was certainly something about the art that captured me. Like, without having, there wasn't this point where I lined up a bunch of different artists' work and said, I like this better than this, and arranged them. I just went where I was drawn to. Oh, pun intended, right? And so there was just a certain sort of silhouette for a Spider-Man face and Spider-Man's eyes that really captivated me versus some of the vintage looks, when I would go to a comic book store, however a kid would find themselves in a comic book store, I just started to gravitate towards what was currently being released at that time. The things that were coming out late 80s into the 90s, they just got me, or I got them. And the vintage stuff was kind of, interesting for me as a kid. I always kind of looked at it and thought, that's kind of dusty, like it wasn't something that, and the marketing machine of Marvel at that time, and some of these companies taking advantage of the fact that collecting was really popular and people did look at it like an investment vehicle, and there was this speculative market. And as a 9-year-old being marketed to, they're putting #1 on everything, they're writing collector's edition on everything. Well, you're going to eat that right up, and it's not like my mom and dad are in a space where they know what's going on. So if I'm like, please mom, please, I need this comic book, it's going to be worth $1 billion one day. Well, you get the Spider-Man #1 that they printed however many millions
In a
of in
special
5
poly
different
bag.
colors, in the special poly bag that says collector's edition #1, get it now or be, not rich 20 years from now. Like, that kind of narrative was floating around, and but it captured me. And that's actually going to tie in really well to something that's super significant to all of us, really, but very significant to my collecting then, and has now reintroduced itself into my life, much like everything I loved in the 90s. Like, I was away from collecting for decades. I was pursuing my academic pursuits or what have you, and just, social life and developing my personality, figuring out, who I am in this world. But then after you spend so much time figuring that out, it's funny, I just went back to who I naturally was when I was 7. And everything I loved then is all I pay attention to now. Like, forget the worldly stuff, forget cars and material stuff, and who cares? What makes me really happy is the stuff I turned to when I was like, Christmas morning, 10 years old, opening up a pack of cards. Like, that's the most amazing feelings ever. So I'm back there now.
Do you guys think you're more attached to the art or to the stories and
Art for me.
the plots, or to like the chase and the rarity, or like, I'm sure it's all of it to some degree, but you said art for you is like,
Yes, it's interesting because Manu and I play in the same playground, but we
Yeah.
don't play the same.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And it's super cool. Yeah.
it is cool. Mine's moments and memories, along with, and I don't talk about this much on my particular channel, there is an element of evaluation, what it might sell for. I'm not going to use the word speculation. That's in every collectible, but there is an element of that I am attracted to. But for me, it's really the moments and memories, and the channel that I have gets to create that on another level. Like, it 10x's it for me. But that is really what's special for me.
I really appreciate that Justin said that, because the moments and memories, I've never heard anyone say that until Justin said that. I mean, the first time I heard him say it, and it stuck with me, because to a certain extent, yeah, I'm definitely in that lane as well. But Justin, current time, is creating moments and memories where I, current time, am chasing the feelings of 30-year-old moments and memories.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's more tangible for me. But to not just say that it was only the art that pulled me, it wasn't book by book the story, how it progressed, but the overall narrative of a character. I did have to like that. But once I knew a character's origin story and what they represented, I didn't really care what happened with the character on a day-to-day. I was like, yo, Spidey's my guy. Black suit Spidey's got an edge. Venom's kind of cool. And as long as it identified and connected with me early, it stayed with me, because I stopped reading comic books in the late 90s, and here I am back into comic books, not necessarily reading them, but loving the same feeling. So it was definitely a combination, but the moments and memories thing is something that resonates with me now, and we are creating brand new moments and memories, so that's a part of it for sure.
Yeah, I think for me, with, talking about Pokemon cards, and I collect, I have a few Marvel cards. I have a lot more Star Wars cards and Dragon Ball Z cards. And, Yu-Gi-Oh and Magic and a lot of other things, largely because the Marvel market got quite expensive, and we can certainly talk about that tonight, relative to some other options that I had. But I think for me with Pokemon, it was very much nostalgia. Or initially, I was a private collector, and I just wanted the cards that I either wasn't able to pull from a pack when I was a kid. I wanted the first edition version in the highest grade possible. Now that I'm an adult and I can buy whatever I want, and it's very just private and driven by that. And then it turned a little bit more into what Justin's talking about, more of this is a fun hobby that I can interact with other people. I can meet people, hang out with people and I think a lot of these hobbies attract a certain it's a fun kind of entertaining, kind of light, enjoyable place to be, where we can have some intellectual debate and discussions, but maybe it's not as it's not maybe as it can't really, it's pretty difficult for it to get into as conflicting or angry or emotional a place as talking about maybe politics or economics or something. It allows us to sort of we all have these shared memories and experiences of the cards or of the characters or whatever, and it kind of allows us to have really nice relationships and adult relationships with other people in the hobby, while we're also privately collecting. I'm definitely a private collector too. I would be doing this even if I had no friends and nobody talked to me about it. But just as Justin said, I agree. It adds so much to the hobby that I can have this channel and hang out with people, bring people like you guys on that I just met and really enjoy. I can, go to conventions, meet tons of people. We, all that type of stuff adds a lot. Although for me, with Pokemon, it was never so much the story. I never found the story, the anime of Pokemon so interesting. It was more about the very specific arts and the specific cards that I collected and was obsessed about as a kid. I think interestingly with Marvel, one I wonder for you guys, kind of now maybe getting into Marvel cards a little bit, are you guys attracted to, and has it changed maybe kind of, throughout your time in the hobby, but were you guys attracted to I want 90s, I want to recollect the 90s, Impel sets or whatever set it was that this was the thing that I wanted? Is that what you started with? Is that what hit you? Or was it more I want the new stuff that's maybe coming out new, or I want the 1966 Donruss stuff, the first appearance, the original stuff, and why did you kind of go to where you went, and how did that kind of evolve for you? It's a big question, but
yeah, it is a big question. I'll be efficient here. Initially it was just me, going after those cards that were seared in my memory, that held a really, special place for me. And that immediately then shifted to, holy crap, I haven't collected from 96 to 2021. What did I miss? I need to grab what I can as quickly as I can to get it. And then that became overwhelming and unhealthy. And then realize, okay, how do I want to exist in today's current Marvel card environment, and in a way that I'll enjoy and it'll be healthy? And that was me really focusing in on Peter Parker Spider-Man. So it was a bit of a journey for me to get there, but that's where I'm at now. It is a Peter Parker Spider-Man collection. Do I have other stuff? If I'm chasing sets, yes. But outside of that, if I'm getting a card that's not Peter Parker Spider-Man, that means I'm using that or leveraging that to get a Peter Parker Spider-Man card.
I love it. I love it. And for me, in the 90s, every Marvel set that came out between 90 and 96, I had bits of, if not, had completed sets, as I'm not a set completer, or what's it called? A set
collector?
Set collector. Completionist. I'm not a completionist anymore. I focus on the cards that I like, and that's about it in the highest grade, and having multiples of them. But in the 90s, I was very much a set collector. I loved opening packs. Unopened boxes were $35, $40, and you had 36 packs, a billion cards per pack. You could make 2 sets sometimes out of some of these 90s products, right? And so filling up binders with the cards was very much a thing. Grading wasn't the thing. Condition sensitivity, I was already that individual. The way that I was just wired, I was always protect it, keep it clean, have the action figures unopened, have the cards carefully put into the binder, make the sets, keep things organized. So I was always that person. When I was reintroduced to collecting just several years ago, my reintroduction was essentially taking out my old stuff from when I was a kid and looking through it. And that's what I had never lost the passion for it. There were a couple of items that were always with me through every year of my life, any city that I lived in. There were some things that I always took with me. I was really close to my inner child for forever, and so those are always with me. But going through all of my cards essentially just a few years ago, that's what woke it up really significantly for me. And then I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be completely honest. I took a look at some values of things. I had no idea that 1996 Masterpieces was valuable. I also have no idea how I had 2 complete sets. So I promptly sold a set for like $1,500 and my life changed. I said, oh my gosh, everything that 9-year-old me, 11-year-old me thought he was going to get rich off of, well, 30 years later, it's worth a little bit, And it's something that even like my dad and I got a kick out of, my mom too, because my mom was the one that would take me to the stores. And my dad, just current day, he was like, wait, what? That thing that we just pulled out of the garage, you just sold for $1,500? How much more of this stuff do we have? I said, I don't know. Let's open up these boxes and see what's in here. Mm-hmm. When I ran out of what I had that I was willing to sell, then that's when my pursuits began again, right? And so I started grading out of my personal collection. Learned what grading was about. I mean, my introduction to grading is 3 years ago. I had no idea that people graded things, not a card, not a comic, nothing. I was off doing other stuff. And so grading started. And once I cleared out of my like higher end raw stuff, I started shopping for it. Unopened boxes, let's grade some of that. Let's dabble in sports. I had no Pokemon stuff from when I was younger, but you better believe I sold some Pokemon stuff in the last, 2 years, not recently. But I just started selling Pokemon stuff that came into my life. I didn't know what I was doing. I left a bunch of money on the table. I sold double error Charizards, ungraded, and I'm sure people are really happy that they had them because, well, if they took advantage of the market last year, who knows how they feel with what I sold them now. But, so that's what it was for me. It was to get back into everything I loved from the 90s, but at just a level that we can do now in our 30s, or 40s or as adults. And it just got really exciting really quick. And I decided I'm never going to leave. And I decided to start that Instagram page and build a community around the things I love. And I'm very happy with the people that I found, including the 2 of you.
So, so let's start maybe jumping into some cards and some items that I know you guys brought tonight. Yeah. And maybe it would be cool you mentioned a couple of sets as you were talking about. I think it would be cool for my audience for you guys to give like an education of sorts on the Marvel card market. What key sets do you think there are out there? Show us some examples of what those key sets look like, and then why you appreciate them. Give a little bit of history, and I think that it'll be great to be able to see these cards and kind of talk about them. So I'm gonna add. We got let's see. So I'm gonna let's do this, and we'll put the card front and center here for people to appreciate. And I'll turn it over to you guys, and I'll maybe butt in with a question or two as we go. But
yeah, how does this look?
That looks great. And before you get started, Justin, I just want Fat Belly Gengar's here with us. Mr. Locknet, hello. Fat Belly Gengar, I just want to read this comment. He said, I have to take credit for this link up because I remember when Pokenomics was in Spidey's chat, I said, you guys should do a pod, and Spidey acknowledged it. And so, if I give you credit, my friend, I give you credit. I love it. And then, how do you pronounce this? Is it Chevals?
Yeah, Chevals, yeah.
I thought he said Goops. Goops is like an interesting typo that happened once on our show when I was writing Oops, and now Goops is a regular thing. And I was like, we got a Goop in here? But no, that actually says Oops. All right, Justin, I'm done. Right. Take it away.
No, yeah. I love it, Manu.
Shovel is making some usual, like, hilarious that you guys will have to understand.
I saw that.
Marvel's cool, but it doesn't have character in the shape of everyday objects, so to speak, like ice cream and motorcycles.
Well, there's a Spider-Man everyone's specking on now called like Bagman or something. It's like the human with a paper bag on his head, and everyone's look, first appearance here, first appearance there. It's like, oh, come on, let's not all go chase Bagman now, please.
Yeah. The thing with Pokemon is like there are so many Pokemon now that they're just trying to figure out, like Pokemon are becoming like every item you see around your house can now, it's like now a Pokemon version of like that item. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
yeah, there's and they're every generation they come out with new Pokemon, so they keep having to design new ones. There are endless amounts. Although, how many do you guys know? Like, how many superheroes are in the Marvel universe? Or like, is it 300? Is it 1,000? Is it 100? Like, what do you think it, like, how much do you think it is? Maybe including villains, just characters, important characters.
Gosh, in the Marvel universe, I would say it's probably close to 4,000 or 5,000 if I had to guess.
Wow.
4,000. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, when you
In
start thinking, yeah, like if you start digging into all of it, like every unique ever character that, I mean, you're talking around, it's been around since 1930s. Human Torch and Namor being the first characters.
That's
It's
really
a long
cool.
time.
That's awesome.
the 30s? I didn't even. I mean, it all started for me. Well, I wasn't born, but 1962. You know, Amazing Fantasy 15. But I guess there were superheroes before that.
That's
Amazing
not when he was
Fantasy
born. That's when
15.
Spider-Man was born.
That's when Spider-Man was born. That's the first appearance of Spider-Man in a book called Amazing Fantasy 15. I'm sure everyone knows that, but just in case.
Just in case. Well, look, here's first of all, Jake asked me to pull out some cards that that his viewers may have not seen before. I'm sure they're familiar with most of the 90s stuff, and we'll show some of that as well. But this is Joe Jusko 2016 Marvel Masterpieces. Marvel Masterpieces made its introduction in 1992. It's had iterations in 93, 94, 95, 96, 2007, 2008, and then went dormant and showed up again in 2016. And this is one of the Battle Spectra cards here. They're really beautiful. You can see Spider-Man silhouette in the back.
I never realized there's a Spidey silhouette in the back.
Yeah, you see his eyes?
I do see it. Oh shoot. Okay, I don't have any of this fancy modern stuff. This is Justin. So
Yeah.
I don't have I've never even held these cards.
I don't know if that will focus in. That's 66 and 99. So these are serial numbered here. Serial numbered became a thing in sports primarily, and has made its way into Marvel cards. And it's a big part of what we would consider the modern Marvel card collecting. But that's a special card. 2016 Marvel Masterpieces continues to be one of the best sets of Marvel cards in general. This is the Venom from that set. This is what's called the gold signature. The gold signatures are not numbered. Again, this is original art, meaning this art was created for this trading card set. It's not repurposed comic book art. Not to say that that's terrible. I like comic book art probably just as much as anybody else, but there is something that's pretty special when art was created for the trading card itself. I'm sure as a Pokemon fan, you could probably appreciate that, because I assume all that art's created for the card. Maybe it isn't, but Joe Jusko just does it, I don't know, differently than anybody else. He has a fantasy art style to him that he brings into the Marvel trading card, which gives it more of a realistic look. This card is not numbered, and that just happens to be the case with the gold signatures. They're not numbered, but there is a rarity to them. This is what's called a tier 4, so there's speculated there's only 50 of these in existence.
Yeah, I think that the point you made, which I think is an interesting one, that some of the cards maybe have famous depictions of a comic book moment or the first appearance of a character on a card. How do you guys feel about? Do you guys like to go after those or collect those because you appreciate and have an affinity for the comic books or the original art, or is that not so important to you and you prefer almost like the original art, that's specific to cards? What's that like for you guys?
Manu, did you want to answer first?
Oh yeah, mine's really quick. There are some comic book covers that I really love, like Amazing Spider-Man 316. It's a Todd McFarlane cover where where Venom's on top of Spider-Man, beating him up, and it's Venom's first cover appearance. Essentially, he did have like a small appearance on 315, but on 316, it's his first cover. So every card that has that depiction on it, I pursue it in a PSA 10. I say PSA 10 because I'm conditioned to say so, but those things might be changing for me in terms of grading companies as of recent. But I pursue it in the highest grade that I can, every card with that depiction on it. And that only applies to things that I really, really, really love. Outside of the covers that I really, really, really love or really, don't bother, but any art of a character that I like, that I enjoy, whether it's a recreation or an original, I pursue it if it looks good to me.
It's gonna depend for me. It can move the needle, but it doesn't necessarily move the needle for me. Art is important, but the character and the rarity, that those two combinations will make a big difference for me as well. And I'll have some examples of that.
I'm very like, there's lots of things I appreciate, and it's sort of like I could pull a card from my collection and be like, I really appreciate this because it's, a nostalgia, or I'm really connected to it that way. Or I really appreciate it because the art looks beautiful to me specifically. Or I really appreciate it because it's extremely rare and difficult to pull. Or I really appreciate it because it's historically interesting. Like, I may not even find the card that aesthetically pleasing, but it was an important moment in the Pokemon hobby, or it signified a tournament that I find really interesting. Or there's an art competition in Pokemon, for example. Maybe I can pull out a card. Maybe I should have gotten some cards. I can teach you about Pokemon.
Yeah. I want to learn, because that sounds familiar, what you just said. Like, the art competition, like, I don't know what that means, but for some reason, like, wait a second, I've heard of that. Justin, I've never seen this Wolverine card.
Yeah, isn't it fantastic? This is a tier 4
gorgeous
Joe Jesco Wolverine. It's numbered out 99. You can tell he just came through that Sentinel in the background.
Yeah.
After destroying it. Joe just does what he does.
Man.
Again, these are very desirable cards. If you're asking, like, this number 26 out of 99, this Wolverine card probably fluctuates, and I haven't checked values, so don't, crucify me here, but probably somewhere between $800 to $1,500 raw. If it's graded with a high grade, it obviously can do much better than that. The Venom I showed earlier is probably somewhere between $500 to $800. The Battle Spectre gem is somewhere between the Venom and Carnage with Spidey in the background. That's somewhere between $1,200 and $2,000 last I checked, and I haven't checked in a while. To give you an idea of where the values on those cards are raw.
So a card like this, for example, which is not a Pokemon that I'm, particularly crazy attached to. The art is pretty cool, a little hard to see here. But these cards are called Art Academy cards. And in 2015, they had a competition where fans of Pokemon could send in their arts from across the world. And they picked a certain number of these arts, and then they printed 100 of each card with the artist's name on it, who actually, the Pokemon fan has the artist's name on it and has a card that the Pokemon company made of their art. That type of thing, I just think, is incredibly cool. So even if I don't love the art on these, the history is to me, it's a big part of the history of the Pokemon hobby, those type of competitions. And I'm appreciative of that. I think it's really cool that the name of, like, artists who are just like random people, just Pokemon fans, or the Pokemon company actually put them on the cards.
I think that's sick. That is really cool. Like, yeah, that's awesome. 100 of each, you said?
100 of each of those, yeah.
And
they were all given to the winner. So the winner received
100 of each one?
And that's part of what was so cool. So Pokemon Company gave them all for free to the winner. And each winner got their own cards, just their own cards.
Wow.
And then they had it was up to them to distribute, friends, family, sell, whatever. And those things actually picked up value over time. Like, I want to know that part of it too.
Sure. These cards are about $5,000 to $20,000 each.
Wow.
Oof, I love it. Okay.
Depending on which one it is. Some of them
Wow.
are rare. The artists, they're either more popular Pokemon or the artists didn't. So this was one of the first things I went after, one of the harder to complete things I went after, because I loved the history and the story. Some of the art I really like, some of the art I don't like, but it's not just all about art to me. It's a combination of things.
Yeah. Fantastic. Excellent, man. I liked learning that.
I thought your audiences would probably want to see precious metal gems. Precious metal gems are probably the most polarizing card in the Marvel trading card space. And it's polarizing because there's, a belief that there's been, nefarious figures behind the scene manipulating prices and values and things of that nature. When people talk about trying to make money off of Marvel cards, it's generally in the PMG space. And that derives from the fact that precious metal gems is one of the most, if not the most sought after insert in the sports card world, particularly in NBA basketball product, because it's Kobe Bryant. First time precious metal gems were introduced was Kobe Bryant's rookie year, 1996, which was a big year for Michael Jordan as well. And those cards sell for a tremendous amount of money. We're talking seven figures for those cards. And Upper Deck, which owns the brand for precious metal gems, which no longer makes NBA cards, now applies it to Marvel cards. So the only place you can get, well, it's not the only place you can get a precious metal gem that's a sports card, but it's not going to be a licensed like NBA, NFL product because they don't have the sports license. They have name recognition license. Like you can get a Michael Jordan PMG, but he'll be in like a warm up outfit and a Hanes, t-shirt or something, not in a Bulls outfit. But precious metal gems showed up in 2013 in a Marvel product, and I'll show one of those later, and has been very desirable ever since. We've seen sales as high as $255,000 for one Spider-Man precious metal gem. And so that kind of money behind this insert has, created good and bad publicity, so to speak. And people have their own opinions about them, of whether or not they like them. Some people think they're ugly because it's not original art. This is comic book art put on a card. And then, of course, some people love them and love the idea that they're a sports insert and they have foiling and shiny and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure shiny means a lot in the Pokemon world too.
Oh yeah, it does.
Oh, what was I going to ask? Oh yeah. Where do you guys put these cards personally? I'm going to push you in terms of what you enjoy to collect, what you go after. Where do you put these like towards the top of what you enjoy or somewhere in the middle towards the bottom?
Yeah. I don't think Manu's ever held a precious metal gem in his hand.
So that's going to lend it to my answer. But Justin, yeah, you definitely take this for sure.
Here's what I'm going to tell you. I didn't think much of it until I held one in hand. And then, well, I guess in fairness, I have to tell people. So this image behind me is of the gold 1/1 Spider-Man. Can you see that? See Spider-Man behind me? Here, I'll do a better job.
We can see it.
Bam.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
So this is a friend had this made for me as a gift, but long story short, the gold precious metal gem, Spider-Man 1/1, I sold the majority ownership for a tremendous amount of money. And so I've enjoyed that, the fact that I was able to own the card, have it in my possession, and I've been able to enjoy the benefits of being able to sell a majority of the ownership. I do still retain ownership in the card, so I get to enjoy it in other ways. Like if I want to take it to a show or whatever, I can do that, and that's a lot of fun. Once, for me, it wasn't until I actually held one in hand that I was like, oh, wow, this is actually a really cool card. I didn't appreciate it as much on the camera or in a picture as I did once I held them in hand.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, it's unfortunate when, first of all, there can be a lot of just like unfair, saying that markets are being pumped and dumped, saying that influencers are intentionally trying to make money off of these things, right? I mean, certainly that with Marvel PMGs, there's still some of that anxiety and frustration around it. And I think there are certain people who are like very pleased that these cards have fallen in value. In some cases, like 70, 80, 90%, right? Some of them. But I think that it's unfortunate when you can't like enjoy something because of that, or if you feel it's like, if you as a collector, because I really like the precious metal gems. I think they're cool. I don't think they're much cooler than like the ATA 25s or the ATA 50s or the ATA 75s. I think some of that like some of the, it's got to be precious metal gem versus just like a cool looking numbered
Mhm.
parallel card of like a cool comic book. I'm not sure I get that as much, but I guess I just, and this happens in the Pokemon world too. If you enjoy something and you really appreciate it and you have the money to afford it, and I don't understand why people are like that idiot or that stupid person. It's like, that's awesome that you really like something and that you're willing to spend that much money. And it's weird to me. I guess I get like there can be a frustration too of like, why are you spending so much money on that card and not on this thing that I think is better? Like I get some of that reaction. I guess it just feels um kind of annoying. Like I'm kind of tired of it, and I just want people to like have fun and collect what they love and enjoy. Years ago, a year ago or so, I started talking about some non-Pokemon things, and I got some sort of negative response because people who had a lot of money in the Pokemon hobby didn't want me introducing people to any other cards outside of the Pokemon hobby for fear that it would impact the prices of the Pokemon hobby. And I hope we get to a point where there's just like less and less of like people trying to control other people's thoughts about what to like and enjoy for financial gain. And where we can all sort of like more just like trust each other that when we're talking about something we think is cool, we're not like trying to shill our own stuff. We're fundamentally like collectors and lovers of these items. And you have to, particularly when you're like influencers, even small influencers like us, you have to be obviously careful of that sort of thing. But I think it's interesting in the Marvel market, and I watched it and like I pretty closely followed precious metal gems and sort of the movement up in price and the movement down in price. So I'm familiar with the market side of them, and it was interesting to see the sort of emotional roller coaster. And Pokemon, we've had an emotional roller coaster too. I mean, we've had some pretty key cards in our hobby go up 10 to 15 to 30 times in value in 2 years, and then all 60 to 70% in value. Now they're still up 5 times in value or whatever, but there's this massive kind of roller coaster. And I think it also hit maybe particularly PMGs, although I'm sure that money flooded through the hobby in general, and all cards pretty much in Marvel, or most cards that have any sort of rarity or demand, probably saw a decent size increase in price, I would assume, and probably is sticking at a higher price, even if it's come down. Is that true?
Well, what happened is you had the natural boom that was created by COVID, meaning that you had people like us who could finally afford to be the kid they always wished they could be, right?
Yeah.
And then you couple that with the fact that we were all buying our childhood back during that time frame. Then it was, Pokemon and sports and maybe some other collectibles I'm just not that aware of were already like skyrocketing in price compared to where they were previously. And then people then looked at Marvel and went, well, Marvel's a big deal, from a brand standpoint. Oh, wow, they have some really nice cards. Oh, they have some rare stuff with big brands on them. Why are they not selling for more? And so you had that surge of, oh, well, this is still cheap compared to whatever other collectible space you were in. And then after that, it was like, okay, what's the real ceiling here? And it had to figure that out. Like it had to go up before it could come and settle back down to where it's at now. And people are still getting educated and trying to understand it. And there were certainly people who spent too much and overpaid for what something might would sell for today. But it's actually really difficult, I think, to judge like equitably because of the fact that the market also is down in general in all spaces. And so it's kind of the fact that Marvel even is still selling at the numbers as that's today, I think speaks to the fact that people got into it and they were like, hey, I actually really enjoy this. I think I'm going to hang around for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jake, to speak to what you said, like the higher end cards definitely had their movement and then their correction. There's all kinds of words and things we can use for it, but the lower end stuff did as well. We just talk about it a little less because like a push from $100 PSA 10 to 1,001 and then becoming the $300 one, percentage wise it's dramatic, but we're talking about hundreds, right? But when you're talking about some of these PNGs, you're talking about a $200,000 sale, now they're closing at 50,000. I'm giving arbitrary examples, right? But the percentage, you lost 75% of value. well, so did some of these $700 cards, but it wasn't $70,000. You know, percentage wise, it happened, but those other sales are what everyone kind of latches onto and says, "Oh my gosh, look at this market." But you know, to what Justin said, we're figuring this thing out, and you know, other interests definitely, you know, came involved, and even they're figuring it out, right? They didn't know
Mhm.
who they were going to sell stuff to once they bought it. They're learning stuff too. You know, it just is what it is.
It's fascinating. I think I read that the majority of the wealth still belongs to the baby boomers. And as that transfers to, you know, Gen X and millennials, what they've enjoyed, what's their nostalgia, what they collect. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in that from a collectible standpoint as that wealth transfers.
Yeah,
Yeah, agreed.
that was sort of my theory behind, you know, investing and speculating quite a bit in Pokemon was the, you know, it's the biggest IP in the world by a large margin. I think it's, you know, 5 times the size of like Marvel and Star Wars, which are sort of the other two big ones that would appeal to sort of our sort of demographic. You know, there's Hello
Mhm.
Kitty, second biggest, but you know, I'm not. That's, you know,
Hello Kitty's the second biggest IP
It's the
behind
second
Pokemon.
biggest. Yeah, it's Pokemon, then Hello Kitty, then Mickey Mouse, I think, right?
yeah. Uh,
Wow.
but yeah, but it'll be really interesting to see. I mean, when I see like the Mickey Mantle selling, you know, Mickey Mantle rookie cards selling for $10 million. The PSA 10s haven't sold. You know, people speculate it could be a $20-30 million card if
Right.
auction, if someone had that type of money and could buy it.
Yeah.
It becomes that's absolutely insane. Although it does become less insane that people are paying $100,000 or $200,000 for a key Marvel card or a key Pokemon card or something like that. It's all crazy though. Like, and you will turn yourself insane if you, I think too, like if you really got to love this stuff. Like it's
You
if
have
you
to.
get too into sort of like, yeah, the whole like I'm going to become rich because I'm going to somehow time that or know exactly what to do with that, or like the amount of risk involved in an asset that can go from that is a piece of cardboard, so it's a non-productive asset that doesn't make or produce anything,
Hmm.
and in an asset like that
Hmm.
can one day be no one could be talking about and no one
Hmm.
can really know about, and it could be worth, you know, how much would that gold was that gold one of one Spider-Man worth? I don't know if you want to talk about specific numbers. So I know you sold it, but like, you know, talking about a card like that, it's like, you know, a card maybe that's going for 10, 15, 25, 30, 40,000 or something like that only a few people know about, to now it becomes more well known, and now all of a sudden there are whales like Steve Aoki and, you know, people with hundreds of millions of dollars to become aware of something, and now it's like that item could now be worth, could go from $10,000 to $40,000 to $1 million or $2 million, you know, or whatever.
Mhm.
And it's crazy, and of course people are going to be emotional about that, and also like, you
Yeah,
know, it's an emotional kind of crazy thing that
it's
happens.
interesting, you know, like I think trying to value a one of one is really not fair. Uh, in the sense of like saying I know what it's worth. It's pretty arrogant actually when you really begin to think about it. I mean, you can attribute a value to something, but really it's going to be timing. And when you sell a one of one, how many people are going to want to buy it and have the means to outbid each other to do it? And what will that number be? It could be low, it could be high. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's not another one you could say, well, that's too much. I'm going to go buy this other one. Or here's a comp. Some people got really discouraged when I didn't share. It's literally been a year ago now when I initially sold the majority ownership. They were like, well, we need it as a comp. I'm like, for what? For your gold one of one Spider-Man? Like, uh, there was no, I wasn't going to help the hobby in any way other than maybe adding to some FOMO of people thinking they're going to get rich, but it was a one of one. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't going to help.
I mean, I wasn't there and I didn't know you in those moments, but I mean,
Mhm.
I think my take would have been like, I both understand why people want you to say, and I definitely understand why you don't want to say, and respect that. You know, it's
Yeah.
one of these things that it's like, we all want info, And I have friends who've sold, $500,000, $1 million cards, right? In the Pokemon world. And we have conversations about like, should we share the info? Should we not share the info? How to share the info, who to share it with? Like, and yeah, it's particularly with something like that. Yeah, I agree. It's tough, although one of ones, how do you value a one of one versus other one of ones versus the one of 10 versus the out of 10?
That's the thing.
That's the fun. It's all speculation is the
It's
answer.
speculation, but that's the other thing about Spider-Man, which it's unique in Marvel, and maybe this is true in Pokemon.
Sure.
Spider-Man just sells differently than anything else.
Sure.
And so to even try to do that, like it's just really not useful. Now, if you had a Venom one of one and a Spider-Gwen or Wolverine one of one, now you might say, okay, well, let's comp these together. But you have to start getting into like multipliers and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't think that was very useful, particularly at the time when people were FOMOing really, really hard. And I didn't think that number being out there and made public was going to be beneficial to people.
Sure.
Well, hey, I wanted to show this. Sketch cards are a huge part of the modern Marvel collecting community. In fact, it was actually the thing that revitalized it initially. People fell in love with the idea of being able to pull a one of one that is, an original piece of art on the card, period. So this was drawn on the trading card. This is not a printed image. It is generally signed by the artist on the back. And you'll see later, but some of these artists are the actual comic book creators. So it would be like could you imagine pulling a sketch card of, say, a Charizard that was the person who, created that image, the creator of Charizard? I can't imagine what that would be worth if that happened, but
yeah, like in Pokemon, we have so Arita is the artist of sort of a famous depiction of Charizard, the base set Charizard, and he does he's actually the #1 signer at events.
like remarks.
So he does signings, and those go for a lot of money when he even just signs the card. There are some sketches that are out there that he's done, but not pack sketches like they have in Marvel. So Pokemon has never had, sketches that you could pull from packs. They've always been sort of, and so if that happened, I mean, we have cards that there are probably hundreds of thousands of copies of in the world that are $1,500 out of brand new modern packs. That's how high Pokemon is. So hundreds of thousands versus Marvel, where you have cards that are one of ones, one of tens, maybe achieving sort of those values of key characters. We have a key character, where there are a few 100,000. So if they made a one of one Charizard in some of the or one in 1,000, honestly, it would be a huge deal in the Pokemon hobby. And there's a lot of like, please don't do that, which is a whole nother thing in the Pokemon hobby of like, we don't want this stuff. Because we don't want the product to become more expensive and go out of reach. And these are the different people with sort of different interests kind of having these debates.
Yeah. Well, I do want people to be aware of sketch cards and, their importance in the hobby.
Yep.
And then you have like Stan Lee. This is from 1998, Silver Age. So this is kind of during the forgotten time for Marvel cards, where basically Marvel had went bankrupt and the industry as a whole had, I'm going to use the word collapse. That may be too strong of an industry, but your mom and pop comic book stores had all went away, and not all had diminished throughout the country. And you had people like Stan Lee, the creator of Spider-Man and so many other amazing characters, was sitting around signing trading cards and stuff. You had the creators doing this, and then they put them in packs. So this is a pack pulled Stan Lee sketch. I
love that card.
How good is that signature?
Dude, I love the photo. I love the signature. It's just so nice for Stan. I love that card.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy to have that one. Let's see here what to show next. I'll show these next.
What do you have those in? Those aren't card savers. There's like an interesting border on the side of them. What is that?
Well, that can't. This has still got the eBay.
Oh, I got you. Oh, that's a bag. And okay, got you.
Yeah,
Sorry. Yeah.
that's a bag. Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a bag.
Mhm.
Got it bagged. So these are comic cuts. Comic cuts have been around, gosh, since the Rittenhouse days. I think it was 2012, where they take a comic book, they chop it up or cut it up, and take the panels, and that becomes the art of the card. And so you can have an interior panel or a cover in some rare occasions that is in the trading card, and the trading card is generally numbered. Like this is the Omega 40 of 40, and this is the panel from ASM #1. It's not the first appearance of Spider-Man, but it's the first uh, issue that had his name on the cover. So that's a really cool comic cut. Really like that one. I don't know that I've showed that one, Manu.
I don't remember seeing that one. I quite like it. I do remember this one though.
Yeah, so this is Todd McFarlane art. This is from the comic book that Manu was discussing earlier, 316, which is, you know, a great issue, great cover, and this is like quintessentially how Todd evolved and how he drew Spider-Man with this.
I want to say something, piggybacking off of what you're saying. Like this is when I fell in love. Like this silhouette is more street, it's more edgy, it's just different. There's an attitude on the shape of this face that did not exist. Spider-Man was just like a round face, you know, this very sort of like the older art is completely different than what Todd McFarlane started to do in the late 80s. It brought this just something that, you know, we were listening to rap music in the 90s. It was just different. Like we saw things differently, felt things differently. This felt on trend with what the world looked like to us. This is what a lot of us fell in love with. You know, that's a McFarlane piece of art on this shirt, you know, and this is when everything changed for me. So I just wanted to step in and say that real quick because no one ever did Spidey like McFarlane did. And there's the 316 cover. Yeah.
Yep, there it is. This is a more modern card here. This is the they call them Z Forces, and you can't really see it with the glare here. I really like this card. I pulled it out of the pack. This one's numbered out 62 in honor of the year 62 that Spider-Man first came out. Manu hates it.
Yeah.
He doesn't like it at all.
I don't really like it, no. But I appreciate that you know that. I do appreciate that you know that.
I love you anyways.
I love you very much.
I'm not the biggest fan of Z Forces. I collected sports a lot as a kid, and those existed when we were kids too. So I have Z Forces that I pulled when I was a kid that looks exactly like that of basketball players, and just okay.
Yeah, and I love it, and that's part of it. You know, everybody has their own thing. Here's an example of I'm not the biggest fan of the art, but because it's rare and what it is, I want to own it, and I'm very happy to own it. This is numbered to 25. Anytime you have Spider-Man that is numbered 100 or less, to me, I think that's important. As a Peter Parker Spider-Man fan, it's important to go ahead and own those now. I would not wait years into the future. I think it has a chance of being very expensive. So this is the Gold Planet Metal, which is another sports insert out of the Spider-Man metal set. So I've got that.
I have a question for you, Justin. Along those lines, like when you say any Spider-Man card that's numbered 100 or below, you think it's a good idea to own it, or how you worded it differently. You didn't say you think it's a good idea, but you said there's significance in owning it, right? And then companies know that collectors feel that way, and then they put out 100 one-of-ones. Doesn't that water down the idea of a one-of-one?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely waters it down, but I think we're still dealing with the scale of popularity. And right now, I mean, how many like active daily Marvel card collectors do you think there are in the world?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know, but
probably not.
So you're saying if we had an idea of how many Marvel card collectors there were, then we could have a way of gauging what's too much for a company to do. And I guess that means like there's no answer to my question then, because I don't know how many collectors there are, but just the principle of it, it's like, I mean, isn't there a point that even like a modern collector that really loves one-of-ones, isn't there a point where even they say, well, I can't keep chasing all these under 100s. There's like every set has a Spider-Man card under 100, and there's there's so many.
Yeah, I think
That's
that
conflicting.
could
You know
happen.
that.
I do think that could happen. It hadn't happened yet, and I still have the ability to get them, so I'm going to keep doing it.
I can appreciate that.
I think too, it's that not obviously not every one of one is created equal. So you're gonna have your first one of ones, or there are sets that have true one of ones, and then there are sets that actually can have three or five, not necessarily in Marvel, but in sports we see this, and Star Wars we see this. There are 3 one of ones that all look slightly differently. You have obviously your printing plates, which are one of ones. It's a whole separate thing. But so I think that your first ever one of one of Spider-Man will always be the first ever one of one, right? No matter how many one of ones they make. The first few from a set period may have certain significance, or this is the first time they use this art as a one of one. Like there'll always be things that can put a certain serialized card above another serialized card, in my opinion, from a sort of historical perspective. And then there's also just like the aesthetic attractiveness, but it's a big thing. I mean, in sports, you have rookies. So every year, although they create way too many, probably numbered and parallel versions of each rookie, at least they're not going to make any more the next year. Whereas in Pokemon and in Marvel and Star Wars, every year there's another, new sort of, one of one. So how do you differentiate is a really important question. And for me, it's like, it would be that sort of first appearance, type thing, rookie, way of doing it for value. And I think if these markets do well over time, you'll see that. And you've obviously seen that with sort of like the first appearance, 2009 Precious Metal Gem, like a first appearance of a key character going for quite a bit more than it'll ever go, that it'll go, even if the art looks quite good in the 2020 or 2021 version, whatever.
Well, I think that there's a real danger to treating Marvel cards like sports cards, and even to some degree, obviously there are all elements. We're talking about trading cards, so there's always going to be elements that are similar, but Marvel cards are just different. There's not a true way to spec on a rookie who's not yet what they're going to be at the same annual, yearly way that you can in the sports card world. So I think there's a danger to like specking on the movies. And Manu, you might speak to this in the comic book world, where we've really seen that not play out very well for people who tried to speculate based on the movie maybe making something more popular and people paying more for it, and then they don't.
I mean, yeah, I've definitely seen certain things work out and certain things fall flat. And I mean, but this falls in line with something that I think Jake said earlier, maybe you said earlier, like there's values associated with these things for a lot of different reasons, and much of the value is speculative. But what I see happening in the comic book world that scares me a little bit is like too much future popularity is already baked into some prices. Like there are comic books that 300 or 400, 9.8. 9.8 is the grading scale in comic books that we look to achieve. We look for a 9.8. 9.9s are great. That's why my name is the 9.9 Newsstand, but we'll talk about what a newsstand is later. No one really shoots for a 10. It's not the same as in the card world. Like a PSA 10 is imperfect. A PSA 10 is the same as another company's 9.5, right? Because it's imperfect. And so our version of a 9.5 or a PSA 10 is a 9.8, right? And there's certain books. And when I talk about the census, that's me referring to a population. In cards, we talk about it as a pop, right? And obviously there's a huge card market. So populations that are in the hundreds are not obnoxiously high in that world. But in the comic book world, it's a little bit different. And you have comic books that there's 300, 400 9.8s, and there are a few of them that are like $20,000, $30,000, and these just came out in the last decade. And so what you're baking into that is that character is going to maintain popularity and eventually catch up to the point where everyone looks at that price and says, oh yeah, this is normal, and they decide to keep it in their collection for that price. But the way I see some of these books, you have people 5 years ago that are into them for nothing. So when a sale hits for $30,000, too many of them come to market because you just took the value from nothing to 30,000. Most people are going to want to take the 30,000. Now, over years, if we have majority of that 300 or 400 census, the number, if we have a lot of those buyers entering at that $20,000, $30,000 level, well, they won't sell. They're in it for that much. So selling it for 32,000 doesn't do much for someone that spent 30 grand on something, right? But some of the values I just think are too far ahead of what something might, like Miles Morales is an exception. Everyone knows Miles Morales is here to stay. But when you know that, and a Miles Morales book comes out and it's produced in the thousands, and all of them get graded and become 9.8s, which one is better than the other if they're all high grade? And how does that value hold if there's no hunt for one being better than the other, right? So there's just certain things that concern me a bit. But that's the whole thing about speculation. Like, what's actually baked into the price? How much confidence do you have in that? And can it organically maintain that price over time, right? I don't really want to buy into something where I'm thinking 30 years from now, someone that's 10 now is going to be 40 and they're going to want to pay me for it. I kind of want to live my life right now, make money now, have fun, do my thing now. I really don't care what happens 30 years from now. So I don't spec, I gut. That's what I like to say. I don't spec, I gut.
So I judge these markets more on sort of like where I think they are psychologically around the sort of collector versus investor, speculator, flipper mindset. And the more a hobby is sort of down on investing and speculating. Oh, I'm getting a lot of feedback. Is that me?
It only just started to happen maybe like 5 minutes ago.
Okay. Like as you were asking.
Yeah. So what I would say is that when the reason I felt the Pokemon hobby was going to basically fall a huge amount, and I also felt that the Marvel card hobby was going to fall a huge amount too, was that the people who, just as you said, Manu, the people who, when collectors start selling to investors, you're in a bubble, basically. Yeah. The easiest way to think about it. When collectors start selling to flippers and speculators, and all the people who now have the items don't know that much about them, just found out they existed and are trying to get rich. If you get the feeling that that's happening, you are in a bubble wherever you are in any market. The opposite can be true too, where there's so much negativity and fear in the market that the only person who would ever buy an item in this market, because nobody thinks they could make money, would be someone who really wants the item and never plans to, or doesn't plan to sell it, right? And so that's the best way to judge collectible markets. And if you combine that with demographics, because hobbies
Justin, go back to the other setup. Jake, sorry. Justin, please go back to the other setup. We have to, don't just take the 90s away without speaking on it. Jake, please continue. We're going to get back to what Justin's doing in a second.
So the other important thing is demographics. And so does your hobby have good demographics where the people in your hobby are going to likely make more money over time and have more money over time? One. And two, are the people in your hobby, are there going to be more people in your hobby as time goes on, or are there going to be less people in the hobby as time goes on? So yeah. It's the demand part, and then sort of the psychology of where you're at. And I think that when longtime collectors are selling for life-changing money, it's unless they're replaced by a lot more rich collectors, all of a sudden you're going to see massive increases in prices and then massive decreases, which is sort of what we've seen. But that doesn't mean that the hobbies are dead and that there aren't lots of collectors into it. So, but it's trying to
definitely doesn't mean that, yeah,
where that point is. And I think that look to people who love this stuff and listen to your friends and listen to yourself and try to start to value this stuff again and say, how do I think, where do I think this should be? What do I think someone who would really love this be willing to pay for it? These types of things, if you're looking to sort of speculate on these things, but, and then add people who are just on huge leverage. And it's that's what we've been going through for the past year and a half. And sports has been hit the most, but all of these, but, and then maybe precious metal gems within Marvel, but all these hobbies have been affected by this, I think, a decent amount.
Absolutely. And I will say though, even though some people are still a little scared of where the comic book market is, and, it could certainly still go down. There's, books are worth tens of thousands. They can go down tens of thousands, but I feel like it's in a really great place because in the conversations that I'm having, as well as myself, I'm buying almost every day. And I'm very happy with the prices I'm paying. And I'm also aware that they could go down, and I'm still comfortable with what I'm paying for the things that I'm buying. Right. So I love where it's at because I feel like I'm not the only me. And that kind of feels like there's too much of a confident thing to say, but it kind of feels like a floor is being established. It kind of feels like aggressive buyers are saying, this is my level. I'm in. Who's got one for me?
Yeah. I mean, for rare items that are not limitless and that, someone like you who is going to be here and can afford these items and own it for a long time, you're very likely not the only person. And there probably are enough people to eat these up over the next year or 2 years or 3 years or whatever.
Yeah, I'm excited. I love what's happening. All right, Justin, let's talk about some 90s.
Let's do it. All right, you lead the way, my friend. I'll be your Vanna White.
Well, this is beautiful. So that hologram, this hologram here with Spider-Man and Venom, I always get the set wrong because I'm a fool, but is it 93 universe? 93 Marvel Universe?
It is Series 4, 93
Series
Marvel
4.
Universe.
Series 3, 1993 Marvel Universe. Sorry, Series 4, 1993 Marvel Universe. This card just like took all of us by storm in the 90s. Every kid wanted this card.
He has it.
He does. Does he have it?
Well, that's 90 MU.
No, these are.
Oh, he's got 90 MU out. And I brought some 90 MU stuff, of course.
I have about 4 sets in here.
Oh, that's so sick. So this card is just a beautiful card. And there's like these different color variations that Justin educated me to. I only have the green one from my childhood. That's the one most of us had, but there's like a red one, an amber one, a blue one, and that they're more difficult to hit. But the most important part about this card is that we all remember it. It was the first advanced hologram we ever saw. It's Spidey and Venom. It was hard to get, but still attainable because it was almost like one in every box or something close to it, you know, and everyone wanted it. And everyone still wants it, but now they want it graded. Now they want as close to a 10 as they possibly can. So it has decent value, not tens of thousands, but, you know, a good looking 10 of this card can sell for $2,500, can sometimes sell for $1,200, right? But that's pretty decent value for a card that most of us can find. But we all love it. And then that other card that Justin's got spinning around there is 1992 Marvel Masterpieces. And it's Joe Jusko. We were speaking of Joe Jusko earlier, but the significance of this particular one is that this one's a buyback. And so in my hand here, I have the actual PSA 10 from not the buyback, but it's one of my favorite cards. That's why I have it. And so that's the same card from 92, but Upper Deck obviously bought unopened boxes, put it into a 2016 Masterpieces set.
That is correct.
And it was an insert from 2016 Masterpieces. The interesting thing about this card, I learned this from Justin and a couple of people that I am now friends with, is no one's quite sure how many of these buybacks exist because they're not hard numbered. There is a stamp on there that lets you know that that is a buyback, that foil Marvel stamp on the front, but we don't know how many exist. But there was a Joe Jusko pack pulled autograph variation from 92 buybacks as well, and those are numbered to 15. But that's all I know about what's on Justin's desk right now.
Yeah, and we don't know how many there are, but if you do the pack odds and kind of work out some backwards math, it's about 104 of each. And that's if they were all inserted evenly per character, but we don't know.
Oh, you know what I brought out, Justin?
Yeah.
I brought out a box of 92.
Oh, that's sweet. So, sealed,
sealed.
Sealed. Yeah, in the Marvel world, sealed is important.
Spidey art there on the box.
Yeah, sealed boxes are important. They do sell for a lot of money. The biggest sales ever were the 2013 Fleer Retro, which the first precious metal gems come out of. An inner box of 6 sold for 200. Was it 200,000? 280,000? Something like that. It was like $50,000-$60,000 a box. Yeah, like $285,000.
What do you mean by inner box of 6? What did that signify?
Well,
the inner
was if you were to buy a case, you would get 2 inner cases of 6 boxes in each inner. And they had a seal, what they call a seal inner case, and Golden sold it, and they actually broke the seal of the inner case because it was right after Jake Paul opened up the G.I. Joe cards.
Oh, they had to. What do you put a 2013 retro box at value-wise today, if you have an idea?
15 to 25, depending on who's all after one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. This is a green PMG. These are largely considered the most desirable color variations because they're the numbered out of 10. I'll show you that on the back if you can see it. I don't know if y'all can see it, but this is number 7 of 10.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
This is Dark Phoenix. This is from the X-Men Metal set, and she's just the character I chose to collect out of that set because Spider-Man is not in it. But I love this image of Dark Phoenix, and I have her full rainbow, including printing plates. So I have every possible card that you can get of this character, including the one of one. I'm very happy to have. Tell us about this, Manu.
Ooh, 1996 Marvel masterpieces. Julie Bell and Boris Vallejo. I don't know if they're still married, but at that time they were husband and wife.
I think they're still together, but I could be
They are
wrong.
okay. Well, more. I wish them the best, no matter what the situation is. And
This is Boris,
so this is Boris Vallejo, and this is one of the Venom cards from the set. There are two Venom cards in the base set, but one of the Venom cards is a combined card with the Spider-Man piece of artwork as well. This is the solo Venom card. And it's just dope. Like, I'll be honest, it's not my favorite depiction of Venom. Venom has never been depicted this way. This is the only time his eyes have ever looked like that. But this is Boris's take on Venom. And I can appreciate and respect it because I love his artwork, his take on things. But it's just hugely significant because of the card set. Like in 1996, when they released this set, this was, I don't know why it was limited release, but it was more limited than the others. I don't know the hard numbers, but it was also distributed differently. Like within a box, there were 18 packs, and each pack had its own card with its own bubble, and then there was a pack within. It was treated like a higher end item, and it was the first time that happened. Well, not the first time. There was 1994 Flair that was distributed in a cardboard box, and that had cellophane, and within that there was a pack.
Right.
So that was actually the first time. And to me, that was a very luxurious set. I love that set, even though it's kind of controversial the way that they did the art. It's kind of like a digitized version of already used artwork. But when you're 9, 10, 11, however old you are, you still end up finding a way to love it. And if you remember it, that love doesn't go away. So that's kind of what's happened with that set. But 96 Masterpieces was just like Marvel's first attempt at an elegant, higher end set. And I knew it was special back in the day, but I did not realize how special it was until a few years ago when I reintroduced myself into this world and I saw the values of these cards. Like this one here is a 9.5. It would probably do well coming up for sale. By the way, I don't even think I knew you had this, Justin. Congrats on that. Or did I know?
Well,
I don't even know.
Well, let me tell you what's extra special about this, and I'll be sure to call the ones out. But I actually had the opportunity to submit these cards to CGC before they ever announced that they were grading Marvel cards. So these are the cards that were actually graded prior to their grading Marvel cards, and they were used in their original launching of their promo of, hey, look, we're grading Marvel cards. So that's what makes these pretty special. I have the Providence to go with that as well. So that set of cards will stay in my collection as that set of graded cards.
So an amazing card, even without the story, but tying in the moment and the memory of your involvement in that process of CGC introducing this amazing card to an audience to show them what's possible here. This plays perfectly in the style that you collect, and it has the significance based on your criteria. And even without that story, for anybody else that's detached from that story, because it's Justin's story, that's his relationship with it, but anyone else can know the card is sick, and this just makes it even more sick. I love that card. I really do. I do not have a 9.5 in a grading company or a 10 of this particular card because I don't want to pay like $2,500 for it, but I do want it.
Well, and 1996 Marvel Masterpieces do not grade easily. For me to get a 9.5 in this is actually really special. But the card, I pack pulled this on the channel. You can actually go look at the video that has this card as the thumbnail and see where I pulled it out of the pack.
I should have brought my 96 out, my graded ones out, because there's still one card that I'm like, I don't remember if you told me you hate it or love it, but the double, there's an insert set from 96 Masterpieces. It's called Double Impact. And it's an embossed card on both sides. There's artwork on both sides. And it's a very sought after card. Every single one of that insert, I think there's only like 5 of them. and the edges are completely screwed up on most of those, right? And so the Spider-Man one, it's one of my favorite Spider-Man cards of all time. But Spider-Man's on the back and Storm's on the front. The highest grade is a PSA 9, which is why I have a PSA 9, because I wasn't able to grade a 10 yet. I graded that 9 myself. My childhood card from that set I did not grade because it wasn't even going to achieve a 9. I want a 10 of that card. But Justin, how do you not have that card, or do you? You never show that card.
I have that card. I actually am not a fan of that particular Spider-Man
I know.
card,
It's
but
so
I know you
nuts to me.
are.
That thing is so amazing. The background alone on that card is magical.
I need to
It is
reacquaint
so
myself
good.
with the background.
Oh, my
Here,
God.
this is I'm just showing some more Marvel masterpieces. Joe Jesco here again, pristine
Yeah.
10. This is out of that same set of cards. CGC grade Marvel cards is a big deal, in my opinion, that we have that now. This is another Marvel masterpieces from the 90s. It's, to me, just a great card of Spider-Man getting ready to do what he does, go rescue the day.
Sick. Super.
All right, we got something really special. This is one of my favorite cards in my entire collection. So John Romita Sr., he has a son, John Romita Jr., who's still actively creating art, particularly for Spider-Man. But John Romita Sr., we're talking about probably the third most. How would you rank him in the hierarchy of Spider-Man creators, artists?
I don't want to get in any trouble. I'm just putting him in the top 5. That's it, because he's
But you've got
one of.
Yeah, you obviously have Ditko, and you have
Kirby, Ditko.
Kirby. More Ditko than Kirby. Kirby did the cover of Amazing Fantasy. And then you have McFarlane, who's probably he's got to be third just because he's McFarlane.
Super important.
But I think John Romita is fourth. He created Punisher, in that whole series run of the early 100s. He's a very important Spider-Man artist. And to have a card from 2001 in the dead period, so to speak, from Topps, who has probably made the least amount of Marvel cards. They only had the license for a short time.
Romita's Spider-Man is like the most notable prior to like McFarlane doing his edgy thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And to have a pack pulled Spider-Man sketch by John Romita Sr. with the trade dress of Spider-Man here at the top. This card's like, it's a pretty rare hit. Like, I can't remember the pack odds, like 1 in 800 packs or something like that, to pull one of these sketches and then for it to be John Romita is really special. Love that card.
Super special. That's like Justin loves sketch cards. And I'm just like, I love the ones I love. I don't just love a card because it's a sketch card. That's the sort of sketch card that Justin was describing that really does it for me. Like, that's a really pivotal creator in the world of Spider-Man. And it's a pack pulled sketch card. Like, that's incredible to me. I'm not familiar with this one, Justin.
Yeah, so this is a stained glass variant. It's going to be hard to really capture it on camera because of lighting and it's see-through. But it is actually 4 of 20, so it is a numbered card. There's a non-variant version of this. It's an insert, so this is a variant of the insert. I actually pulled this on the channel out of a pack, so it's really special to me because I was not expecting it at all because someone had just told me, yeah, they have these variants in here. They're numbered to 20, and then I pulled the Spider-Man of all the ones that I pulled. So
I'm going to tell you, this is a card that they numbered, and it doesn't bother me. I want one. That's an amazing card.
Isn't that amazing? This is even before the stained glass comic books were popular.
And it's flair, so it ties into my emotional connection with the 90s. Like, come on, that's sick.
Yeah. All right, and then I had to show this one because this card is it means a lot to me. Just the art, I should say, not this particular card.
And you got him back there too.
Yeah, I do. I got him. See, Spidey and Wolverine. Wolverine is my second favorite, and for a long time I would say 1A, 1B. Spider-Man is easily number 1. I've had to really narrow that focus because Wolverine is the second most expensive character in Marvel cards, and to try to collect both those characters will bankrupt just about anybody.
Sure.
But this card from my childhood, this is 1994 Fleer Ultra X-Men, and I just always loved the way my two favorite characters are depicted here. Wolverine and his ferocious killer mentality, and Spider-Man with his Spidey sense, just as like he's just relaxed. Like Wolverine can't touch him because he's so
he's like, I'm too agile for you. I'm just gonna get out of the way.
Way too agile. I will say that Wolverine would eventually kill Spider-Man because Wolverine has unlimited stamina and can't be killed and is made of indestructible bones. But I'm pretty sure that in the meantime, Peter Parker would just whip up some type of big magnet and just stick him to it and then leave.
Right.
Yeah, that's how I envision it.
When you first started saying that, I thought you were going to tell me about a storyline where Wolverine actually killed Spider-Man. I was like, no, say it ain't so.
Sure.
Ooh, I want to get mine. All right, we'll just show yours. I love it.
Well, you can show yours.
No, it's the same card. What am I going to show?
What is it going to show? I think Jake has one too.
No way. Pull out the 66, man.
Why don't you describe this one, Manu?
So this is a really fun thing that we kind of all like collectively learn more and more about.
Oh, it looks
so
good.
Cool. Nice, man. That is awesome. So this set, we were having like a nice conversation on the channel about, what it means to say this is rookie, and what it means to say this is the first time a character came out in a card set. So the interesting thing about this 66 set, it is in fact the first time Spider-Man is on a card, but he's on 13 cards in this set. Wait, is it 13, 11, 16? Who cares? He's on more than 10 cards in the set. So it is the first set ever with Spider-Man on a card, but there's not just one card. And one of the cards is actually the earliest in the series, and he's on the back of it as part of the puzzle. So that's essentially the smallest numbered card out of the set. It's just interesting. Every Spider-Man card in the 66 set is ultimately of huge significance to me, and I would like to continue to get them in respectable grades. And these are cards that I will just put away.
You guys know this card?
Which one is
Superman? That's not a Wonder Bread, is it?
This is the number one. This is the first ever Superman card. First ever superhero.
What? Can Jake, can you make yourself larger for a second so I can get some eyes on that real quick, please? So this is the first ever Superman on a card.
Oh, and it's a good looking image too.
This is fantastic. Now let's get a look at the label. Let's read. What set is it? What year was this? What is this stuff?
This is a 1940 Superman.
Wow.
So it's and similar to what you were just saying about Spider-Man, just why I mentioned it, is that Superman's on every card in the set, but this is the number one from the set, so it's considered his rookie.
I love that you have that. I think that's super awesome. I had never even seen that. I'm familiar with the first Batman image, I think, but I was not familiar with that. So that's awesome.
That's a great looking card.
Yeah, super cool.
I have the Batman, but here's the Robin too. I can't find the Batman.
Oh, that's the set that the Batman came from, right?
Yeah. I'm a fan of all the first, so that's why I have all of them from each. Yeah.
I love it. I can't wait. I'm gonna hopefully one day I'll be like, look, I got one. Because I don't have any of that. That stuff's too cool.
I picked this particular Spider-Man image because it spoke to me. I love the idea that he's kind of breaking the third wall here. He's taking a photo of you, and I really like that. So to me, it's a cool element of the card here.
I love that card. And Justin, what else did you used to like? You used to. Well, maybe we all collectively did, but I think you might have been the first to mention, or maybe not. I don't know. But the fact that you could write your own caption, there's so many of these cards on eBay actually have, the kid that first owned it, writing a little caption on it. It's incredible.
Yeah. And if I knew that a kid in 1966 wrote on it, like that, I think would actually be pretty special. But I'm glad I have one too.
If you actually knew it was from 66, it would be special. It's kind of like in old comics, we actually appreciate a date stamp. In modern comics, you don't want any writing on your book. But in the olden days, when a comic used to come into the comic book store, the owners or whoever worked there used to stamp each book with the day that it was either arrived or available for sale. I don't remember. But we like that date stamp. It's part of its story.
This is 1995 Flair Marvel Annual, but this is a buyback.
Too?
Yeah, I have the buyback out of 20.
I love this card.
This is a PSA 9. I wish it was a 10. This card's not easy to get, period. And it is clean. I think I must have a fingerprint on it or something.
You know you're going to send it to CGC anyway.
This one I actually would like to keep in a PSA label because of that red on red.
Oh.
So are you going to be mostly CGC, Justin?
Man, I don't like being painted in a corner on anything in life. Right now, I'm definitely sending much of my collection to CGC, and will continue to do so, and I'm enjoying it. But like that belongs in a PSA slab. This is a red Spider-Man PMG from 2017. It just looks great.
I thought that said 10 for a second because I just saw like 2 things, and I was like, wait, what?
Dreaded 8.5. And it got the 8.5 because of this corner. I don't know if you can see it, which I nicked in my shaking excitement taking it out of the ComC package.
I think you told me that.
Yeah, I can't believe I did it.
Oh my God.
I purchased that card right before that.
Memories. You're not going to forget that.
Yeah. This is from 2018 Marvel Masterpiece. That's Simone Bianchi, which is a very famous globally famous artist. But this is a PSA 8, and this is a canvas gallery, gold gallery, and it's $47.99. And I guess I should have.
Hey, Justin, Johnny Bongo.
Oh,
there's a message. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I didn't say. I was going to say this one's $29.99.
There's a message in the chat from Johnny Bongo, and he says, Spidey, you're going to love this question, by the way. He says, Spidey, what's Wolverine's rookie card?
Probably is it 1987 Comic Images?
Is it?
If you don't count
the answer to that, yeah.
Well, if you don't count like the sticker cards, isn't there what is it? Is it 84? You can get comic covers from 84, and then from 70, is it 70? 76, 77, 78, you can get the sticker cards. I'm not a huge fan of the sticker cards, but
I don't mind. I mean, you know that whole the Venom sticker.
Yeah.
Card. It's smaller than a card. It's a sticker, but I love it. I love it to pieces. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Here's another card that's actually really special to me. This is from that same CGC disappear. Same CGC submitment. And this is a gold
screen froze, huh?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it or not. But
no.
Can you see it? Boom.
There it is. It popped
like
up.
Magic.
Oh yeah, we love this card, dude. I love this set.
Here, let me let's see if I can restart it if it works better.
Yeah. Oh. Got a little echo, but this is a pristine 10 gold web. Just love this card from Joe.
This is from 1995, right?
Yes, from the Spider-Man set.
And did they call this one? Because it's interesting, and I forget. There's a gold web, and there's one called Masterpieces, like an insert set they called Masterpieces, which was also the same chrome look.
Right, but yeah, this is the gold web.
So I think as we go, I'm gonna throw.
Oh, they were both in the same set. Yeah.
I'm gonna throw some questions onto the screen if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh heck yeah.
Just because. So if people do want to ask some questions, feel free to.
Please.
Here's one from Amplitude. I'd like to know, is there more information on Marvel / Upper Deck with print run numbers as opposed to Pokemon? And does sealed stuff also correlate to Pokemon increase in value over time? So we do not have print numbers in Pokemon. So why don't you guys talk to us a little bit? So because of the serialized stuff, people can work backwards to know, and the odds, but why don't you guys answer it more fully, I guess, how that's done, how you guys do it. Does Upper Deck actually give those print numbers out, or do people sort of figure out, how much they printed, et cetera?
Manu, do you want me to take it?
That's a question for you, my friend.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I thought so. I just want to be sure.
I appreciate it.
So Upper Deck is not going to give print run numbers. There's too much, I think, liability to do that with no benefit to them. Secondly, you can determine the print run because they guarantee hits that are serialized. Not every box is that way, but a bunch of them in the modern Marvel cards are that way. Example would be the, let's see if I can grab it here. You have these. Example, you have the Spider-Man Metal, one serial number card per box. And because as a serial number card per box, you can work out how many there are, 50,200. And that is the estimated box print run. Now, they're not printing any of those serial numbers twice. So that is the print run. Now, what we did see some serial number cards end up in retail product, which makes that print run maybe even lower. But you can really scale it from that way. The other thing that happened, and I can actually grab this. Give me 1 second.
Even with seeing some of them in the retail boxes, there were also hobby boxes that were duds. So that might even just balance it out. Like that might be where they accidentally ended up.
Yeah, for sure. Could be the case. But even in earlier Marvel masterpieces, they were numbered on the box.
Yeah, what number is that one?
This is number 2. I wish I could get the focus. 229,365 of 350.
That's so crazy. 350,000. Mine's almost at the end. I'm at 335,085. Isn't that crazy?
Well, so that was
50,000 boxes.
And that box still sells for $400 a box right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But look at this. This is how far Marvel dropped. There's only 5,000 boxes.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
This is
which set is that?
2,836. This is Marvel 75th. I mean,
What
there's
year did that come out?
literally individuals who open most of this.
Oh my gosh, really?
This box here, there's only we're in my card. There's only 5,000 of these made, serial numbered on the box. So yes, there are cards that you can determine the print run, even though Upper Deck did not put out the numbers exactly. Marvel Masterpieces, outside of the gold SIGs, every card is numbered, and you can figure out the print run for those as well.
And that was my first time ever coming across a set where the entire thing is a bunch of numbered cards, right? Just some are numbered to 2,000, some are numbered to 200, some are numbered to 50, but it was my first time ever seeing a set where every card was numbered. I would assume that already existed in sports cards, but just like I wasn't in any other collecting, I also wasn't in sports cards, so I was completely unfamiliar with the concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions? Or what was the other part of that question?
The second part of it is, that's the other. Hold on, we'll get to that in a sec. Does it increase in value over time? Has it increased in value over time?
Sealed boxes or individual cards?
Sealed boxes.
Sealed. If I was an investor in Marvel cards, I would only buy and hold sealed. Like, if that was the only reason I was in the game, I didn't care about them at all. Like, I would just buy sealed because there just is not enough of it. Even with the modern stuff, it can be hard to get. It gets expensive. There are literally people who are pre-ordering, and then when the set actually releases, they're just selling it for 2 or 3 times more than what they pre-ordered it for. And if it continues to grow in popularity, maybe it doesn't. That's going to continue to be the case. I just don't know that Upper Deck actually respects Marvel at the level that, say, I do, or maybe some others, where they're going to start printing it, hundreds of thousands of boxes. I just don't see that happening anytime soon.
You don't you said Upper Deck doesn't respect it at the level. Is that the word you used?
Yeah, and what I mean by that is I don't think they believe that it could grow to that scale of popularity. Like if they would put, have you seen how much money they're spending on advertising, say for like Marvel Versus? If they spent that type of money in advertising on Marvel trading cards, you know how much it could grow as a property.
And then to dive a little deeper into that question, two sorts of boxes. You have your old stuff, your current stuff. The current stuff has really, some of them have tremendously high values, like we just talked about 2013 retro, 15 to 25,000 a box. Last year selling for $50,000-$60,000 a box. And then in the 90s, really the standout box is 1996, anywhere between like $500 and $7,500 a box currently. But we should also speak maybe a little bit about what it means to hold 90s boxes if you are going to open them, or what might happen to the perception of those, since so many of those sets brick over time. There's kind of this thought process right now where people are like, well, might as well just open them because they're just going to turn into useless bricks.
Yeah, if it's a glossy card at all, such as 1993 Marvel Masterpieces, holding that sealed product from an investment standpoint would be pretty risky.
Right.
Yep, that's for sure. So here we're looking at, oh, go ahead.
What's the most expensive Marvel box?
The 2013 Fleer Retro.
2013 Fleer Retro.
And that this card came out of.
How much is that right now, sealed?
That's what I was answering Manu earlier when I said somewhere between 15 and 20,000 sealed.
That's the one. Okay, 15.
Remember, only about, I can't remember the number offhand. Oh, was it 6,700 of those boxes were made?
I don't remember.
Yeah, it's not more than that. So if I'm wrong, because I just don't remember the number exactly, it's like 6,700 or less.
And I'm going to say something dumb here. You got to correct me. That's the first PMGs for Marvel came out of that?
No, you're exactly right. This is Spider-Man's rookie PMG, as some people like to call it.
Okay.
This is the most expensive card I've ever purchased. I paid $20,000 for it.
My goodness. Wow. I did not know that. You usually pull the big ones.
That's the most expensive. Well, I've never been able to open this product. I've never opened a box of 2013 Fleer Retro. I have tried really hard to make that happen, but have not. I could have bought a sealed box and then hoped I'd have got this card.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, but we've seen sales of Red Spider-Man PMGs for 70,000. You know, like. The gold, the blue out of 50 sold for 132 at the peak of the market. It would obviously sell for less than that now.
Jake, what's Amplitude saying here with his most recent comment? PMG is just a full art V. Changed my mind. I'm assuming V is what is that?
It's just a style of Pokemon card, a type of Pokemon card right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so right now the most expensive cards out of modern stuff in Pokemon are something called alt arts. A full RV is not even that expensive.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, he's just talking about the look. He said he's just kidding. It's just a similar
look. I think that it's an interesting. It's such a different market, Marvel and Pokemon right now. All of the serialized number stuff, the limited stuff versus the mass-produced Pokemon stuff, and it's interesting to hear people's takes. I wish you guys were also Pokemon fans, so I would ask you sort of, which comparisons. Which one do you sort of prefer and why?
Charizard, first edition.
I have maybe the silliest Pokemon question, but I don't have an answer, so I want to know the answer.
Sure.
Is Charizard a villain or a hero?
So
he's too cute to be a villain. Come on.
So definitely not.
I saw a video where they were fighting. He definitely came off as the villain to Pikachu.
And like Detective Pikachu, the movie.
Yeah.
So the Pokemon are not necessarily good or evil. It's who owns them and trains them and battles them. That's what the short answer.
Oh, they're
but I would still say that people would probably say it's not the Pokemon is evil. It's the trainer that's evil. But it's not. Most people who collect cards, no, I don't want to say most. I mean, so many people who collect cards, but I think there's a ton of people, most is not the right way to put it. There are a ton of people who collect cards who are not particularly interested in the anime or the story and are more just they like the design. They like the specific characters for just the way they look and
So what is the nostalgic draw to Charizard in particular, or what cemented him or that image as the card of choice out of the sets?
So in base set, which was the first set that most kids in the US at least was the first time we engaged with Pokemon. Charizard was one of the holos. And the reason though that people went for that holo probably more than others, one, it's a fire breathing dragon.
Heck yeah.
The other stuff. And so I think it's just like it was just sort of like the most, excuse my language, just like badass one instinctively. It was an evolved form. It was a starter. So there are 3 starters there, and it was the most evolved form of one of the 3 starters. So likely starters are the ones that in the video games you start with, basically. You can choose one of these 3 Pokemon to play.
You can play first.
Yeah. And so starters tend to be very important in Pokemon, somewhat important. Starters, legendaries, mythics usually are the most kind of important Pokemon usually. And this is the evolved form. It was fire breathing. And then on the card itself, it was one of the only cards, maybe the only card that had more of kind of like a ferocious sort of like attacky pose and attacky style art versus more plain art in base set, which I think had something to do with it. And it also had the most hit points of any card on the card because this is a playing card game, unlike Marvel cards. So I think all of those reasons kind of made it. But as kids, it was the most. This was not something that like adults decided for us. It was very. Maybe they did. We're not even aware of it because of the branding and whatever that the Pokemon company adults did.
Maybe, yeah.
It's
I
very.
I love what you just said. Adults did not.
It's very much not a situation where it was like, where it felt at all like it was trying to make it expensive. It felt very sort of like organic.
I was just introduced to the concept of Dark Charizard, and just hearing it or seeing it being said in the chat drew me in because I like when something good has a darker one as well.
Sure.
And so I was like, I want to see it. They're like, Google it, dummy. So I Googled it, and it's like the idea of it. I haven't seen an image yet. I mean, I've seen some images, but I haven't seen a card yet where I was like, yo, that's amazing. I still like the standard Charizard better, but I love that there's a Dark Charizard. Like I legitimately did not know that.
And Charizard, a Dark Charizard, a Crystal Charizard, a Mega Charizard. There's a lot of different versions.
Awesome. Well, it seems like Pikachu should be the most popular.
I like it. I actually have
Pikachu is the most popular Pokemon probably overall. Part of it is that Pikachu tends not to have like the hardest to chase cards. Pokemon has made Charizard more of in the highest tier of rarity for whatever reason versus Pikachu. Pikachu only has a couple of cards that Pikachu is usually not even a holo. Usually Pikachu is just a common card.
Gotcha.
So
yeah.
That means I answered. I mean, I answered my opinion, but my opinion doesn't know anything about Pokemon, so I answered it incorrectly because somebody in the chat said, is Spider-Man Charizard or Pikachu? But if you're from what you're saying, like maybe Spider-Man is Pikachu, if he's like the most popular character in Pokemon.
Yeah, from like a value card perspective, Charizard would be Spider-Man. And I know Wolverine is up there and Venom's somewhat up there. It's probably. How much is the difference in price between Spider-Man and Wolverine?
Double.
For the same. It's double. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in most cases, there's obviously always exceptions, but especially if you're like leaning towards like the PMG side of the market, it's basically double.
Yeah. So I would say Charizard is usually that way too. There's some cards like the top 5 in Pokemon would probably be Charizard. In terms of card value, generally would be Charizard. If Pikachu does have a card that's super rare, Pikachu would definitely be up there. But Charizard, Lugia is usually second, and Rayquaza are usually the top 3. Lugia, Charizard, and Rayquaza.
And feel free to beat me up. Feel free to kick me off the channel. What is Yu-Gi-Oh?
Yu-Gi-Oh is you ever saw you ever heard of the manga or the anime? Well, obviously you haven't. It was a In the US, most people became familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh because there was a Saturday morning cartoon on the WB with Yu-Gi-Oh
Okay.
that was like very popular.
Okay.
But it was also a very popular game. So a lot of people, usually people who are just slightly younger than me, even just like 2-3 years, were a little bit more into Yu-Gi-Oh. And so in some cases, we're more into Yu-Gi-Oh than Pokemon. And Magic is a little bit older than me usually. Now there are people who like Magic. There are people younger than me who like Magic. There are people older than me who like Yu-Gi-Oh. You know, so but generally speaking, that's when like those games were the most popular for a certain kid range.
I love what Johnny just said. He said Charizard is the people's dragon, highly respected. I don't, you know, like that's how it feels to me. Like I love him. And about Magic, that's so interesting. That's what I remember happening. I remember the time, and I think this is how I said it to Justin as well. Like when I used to be in the comic book stores, there was a period of time where Magic had just come out, or seemingly, and every comic book store owner that had enough room cleared out the back of the shop, brought in those big white tables with the deployable legs, and you had the back of the shop was all like Magic the Gathering people, and the front of the shop was all comic book and card people, and we didn't really intermingle, you know. I remember those times. Good times. That was fun. It was, oh man, it was good.
I like Blue Juju's question.
What's that?
This one. Go ahead, Jake.
Why Marvel trading cards over comics? Are there enough exclusive artwork in cards that aren't shared in the comics? Do the younger generations even have access to Marvel cards to carry the hobby?
Ooh, the younger generations question is something that I've been thinking about recently a lot. And I would like Justin to really elaborate on that. But why Marvel cards over comics? I never thought about either or. I think both coexist. For me, they completely both exist in my collecting, in my passion, so on and so forth. And then, are there enough exclusive artwork and cards that aren't shared in the comics? That's just an interesting question. I would need to digest that a little bit more, give it some more thought. There's certainly plenty of exclusive artwork, but then I live in a different era of cards, so Justin could speak to that. But this question here, the younger generations, do the younger generations even have access to Marvel cards? This has been a concern for me because it is such an interesting hunt, such a sort of like, you know, chasing the hit sort of excitement that quickly prices out children, like quickly it becomes an adult's activity. And so even like most recently, just from the outside looking in, there was a set that came out. It was the Into the Spider-Verse set, you know, the animated Miles Morales movie. It was the card set for that. And that set is designed, in my opinion, for a younger audience to enjoy. But there it is. But even those prices initially were too, now they're settling down because I think people recognize, like, wait a second, this isn't really the sort of, you know, anyway, I'm going to start too much of a thing. But this set, I believe, should have had a much lower price point and could have been enjoyed by a lot of people. But early on, it got snatched up by a bunch of adults. So I don't know. I don't know if kids have access to Marvel cards these days.
No, Upper Deck does not build sets for kids. They build hobby boxes. They literally, when they're using the language to describe these boxes, they'll use language such as build equity in the boxes. And they'll reference eBay sales as to what is driving how they're building the boxes. So it is definitely designed for doctors, lawyers, middle-aged men and women who have money who want to buy this product. That is, in my opinion, what they're designed for. They are beginning to start having retail boxes, but because the hobby boxes are so expensive, as soon as these retail boxes have hit the shelf, people are buying them up as quickly as they can. So even then, kids, it's still not enough product. You know, I would love to see them print that stuff to the point that you could always find it on a shelf. But I don't know that they're going to take that risk unless like Walmart or Target commit to, you know, paying for it and buying it. But no, right now it's not. If you're like thinking of Marvel cards as an investment that you plan to sell 15, 20 years from now, when the current 10-year-old is going to be 35 or 40, then I don't think that's super wise personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Pokemon has going for it that Marvel cards don't is both that it is more affordable, you know, for kids, and kids can engage it and have get access to just the commons and uncommons and play like kids can have binders of lots of cheap cards. It would be great if Marvel figured out a way to like also have product like that where like the commons and uncommon, there could be some cheese, but not necessarily. It's just making it too expensive for kids. It's
Sorry that.
Wait, what happened? Oh.
Yeah.
See, here's the issue. I have a lot of Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
But the reason I have a lot of Pokemon cards is not because I was a collector, it's because I bought collections of Pokemon cards when everything started to boom, and all I did was go through and look for what I recognized and sold it. How the heck am I supposed to know what any of this stuff is? Like, I literally don't know what I'm looking at. And what if there is value in here? And this is like a crazy binder where each binder has like 4 cards in it, right? Like if I pull out a card, there's like 3 or 4 behind it. Who knows what's in these things? I need an education. Now, my question to you about it is though, is it even worth it right now? How far down is the market for like a card that was 500 last year? Where is it now?
Depends on the card, but your average. So last year it's still around 400 to 450. So most of the fall happened more a year and a half ago to 2 years now.
Okay.
So most of the fall in price. So it's been pretty stable. Pokemon has probably been the most stable market of any market of I follow like 15 to 20 different markets. And Pokemon has probably been the most stable market over the last year overall.
Really?
Now, there have been cards that have doubled in price over the last year, and there are cards that haven't halved in price over the last year because it's a humongous, crazy market. But a card that was $500 2 years ago, if it was a pretty common card that's not like a trophy-like card, it's probably $250 now-ish.
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah.
Binder like that. Usually, people put the best cards in the front.
Usually, I took so many cards out here. I top loaded anything that I knew had value and then sold all of those.
Sure. Yeah, the way you start is first edition, or the way you start is hollows first, and then first editions. Anything with a first edition stamp.
And then someone educated me the other day.
Yeah.
All first editions are shadowless. There is no shadowed first edition.
So shadowless is only for the original base set. There are no shadowless cards outside of base set. So every first edition base set card is shadowless, but there's a first edition for all the other sets too in Wizards of the Coast.
That base set first edition shadowless.
Yeah, so there's first edition shadowless technically, and then there's just shadowless, and then there's unlimited. Yeah,
got it.
Yeah, but yeah, for something like that, if there's some hollows in there, you might have some 5, 10, 15, 20, up to a couple $100 card if it was like the right hollow in pretty good condition.
Yeah.
Probably you mostly have like 20 cent, 50 cent cards in there. Mostly bulk, probably. But
most likely,
if you like it, you can build sets out of it and sell those sets for $30, $40, $50.
One day I'm gonna go through it. Yeah, I'm going to put some bundles together, just get it out of here and get it in someone else's collection. All the shiny ones are top loaded. I'll go through those again. I remember like I was interested in there was like Blastoise and stuff. And I was like, oh, these might grade. And then I never got around to it. And then I lost interest in doing so because I went back to what I was passionate in and the market started to decline. So they just kind of got put on the back burner, but maybe I'll grade them. I don't know.
Yeah, so here's another Marvel question for you. What performs better, Marvel Modern or vintage, vintage cards? Short-term versus long-term, is the market moving similar to Pokemon? So I can talk about Pokemon if you guys want to talk about Marvel.
I think Modern performs better because Justin's definitely going to talk about this, but I think Modern performs better. That's where the money is playing, and vintage is where the collectors are collecting. So there's more movement in Modern from what it seems like. There's more.
Yeah, the easy answer is Modern. In terms of like the majority of the money is after Modern. There's a number of reasons for that, but serial numbered sports card insert brands being the number one driver. But there are very expensive cards from the 90s that people don't talk about that much or know about. The very first sketch cards ever came out in 1997. Again, very few boxes produced, and A lot of people don't really even realize what's there, but those cards can be pretty expensive. You know, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, maybe even $10,000 for a Stan Lee sketch card. But otherwise, it's modern. I don't think you'll see the '90s stuff reach some of the prices that the moderns at ever. But who knows what the high grade stuff of the '90s does at some point in the future. But right now, it's definitely modern.
Yeah, I agree. Right now, it's definitely modern, but I love what you said. Who knows what it does in the future? I think that market, that awareness, is just being created. And yeah, who knows? Who knows what like will end up being the most sought after stuff from the
Well,
90s.
so you
mentioned
have
the sketch cards.
So I was just going to break up the eras real quick. So you have the 1966 Donruss and that era. Then you get into the stuff that came out in the 80s up to Comic Images, and then you begin with the first original art set, which is 1990 MU. A lot of people don't realize that's an original art set created for the trading card. That begins at the 90s era, which ends in 96. And then you go into this, period of dormant, kind of dark age for Marvel cards from 97 to 2011, 12, 2012 and 13. Upper Deck takes over the license and begins the modern Marvel card set. And then beginning with the 2020 Marvel Masterpieces release, that kind of issued us into another era of Marvel cards that we're in right now.
So I think a smaller amount of people with a large amount of money is why the Marvel market skews to sort of like, low numbered key type items are going to be very, very expensive. Whereas if you look and the vintage stuff, there's just too much of it to achieve those types of numbers, even for the stuff that's probably, like this 1966 Donruss stuff that, it's quite difficult to find that stuff in high grade. And for sure, 9s and 10s of that are quite expensive. Whereas if you look at sports, not only has Mickey Mantle rookies, for example, had attrition rate, crazy high attrition rates all the way back from the 1950s, basically when those cards were being produced. But there was actually not a lot of some of those sets being produced. Now there are also some, Marvel, like what's an old Marvel set, a fairly old Marvel set that was pretty low produced? Does anything come to your mind?
96.
Yeah. The 96 Marvel Masterpieces is rumored to have 36,000 boxes.
Okay.
So if you want to call that low produced.
I mean, relatively to the 350,000.
Right.
I think it's very tough. Like the number one collector thing in Marvel is comics. The number one collector thing in Star Wars is toys. The number one collector thing in sports is probably cards. Obviously, memorabilia can be extremely expensive. In Pokemon, it's definitely cards. And so I think it'll be interesting to see if the Marvel card market. I mean, I'm a believer that you guys, that in order for the Marvel market to really grow, you actually need to be looking more at like Pokemon card like people who are card collectors, and most card collectors are Pokemon collectors, and most like any sort of non-sports card collectors are Pokemon collectors, Yu-Gi-Oh collectors, Magic collectors, much bigger than your pop culture collectors in Marvel and Star Wars. And in my mind, Marvel and Star Wars is sort of like a certain group of people. And there are a few people who sort of do it all and do everything. I do think what's interesting is that a number of Marvel collectors are like 5-6 years older, or even 3-4 years older. And so they just didn't engage with Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh at all. So they just like, I have zero.
Exactly what happened.
I don't know what these things are at all. Whereas someone in my age can see how the same type of person would like both, and I enjoy both things. It's just sort of very interesting. But I actually think in order for the card market to grow, you're trying to get it from two places. You're trying to get it from comic book lovers to kind of, collectors to kind of collect the cards more. But you also can do it from cross collectors from cards. And I think that's what happened with sports cards, right? A lot of people from the sports cards started to see the value, who also think Marvel's cool, came. But if more non-sports conventions happen and more non-sports becomes a thing in general, I think you're going to see more card collectors who collect all these different types of cards and enjoy all these different types of cards and aren't necessarily singularly in IPs. And if that happens, I would expect it to broaden out, and it wouldn't just be the one of one. Like, it wouldn't be just be the super rare stuff.
Right.
There might be more value on some of the cooler stuff that there's like a few thousand of this card, and right now that's just too many, for that card to
right now.
Right now. But if that was in Pokemon, that card would be 25.
Not enough at all.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because there's just so much more demand in Pokemon right now. So much more. Yeah.
Well, my experience of sports card people coming into Marvel cards was most of them were just trying to get, they were trying to make money. They were trying to be in something before it got big. They were trying to speculate early and trying to make money quickly and that kind of stuff. And then there were some who were like, you know what? I really like this space a lot. The community seems pretty cool. I like the cards. It's a whole different vibe. And then some of those sports card collectors that moved into Marvel cards hung around and are still here.
Found a love.
They found a love. Yeah. I've always argued like, hey, be careful dipping your toe into Marvel cards because you kind of dive all in. If you're not careful, it'll suck you in. But in terms of like what's gonna happen long term, I don't know. I don't think.
I know what's gonna happen long term. 1966 Donruss is gonna be way more valuable than it is right now. Like, that is undeniably going to happen. Buy them up, buy them in high grades, put them away. It's the first time Spider-Man's on a card. The thing looks vintage. It looks all dingy. That's what it takes for a card to be worth $1 million. That's going to be the mantle set. So go get your Spider-Man Babe Ruth today. Matter of fact, hit me up tonight after this stream. But I also want to say, somebody said here, what sells better, Marvel comics or cards? Comics by like, it's not even funny. It's the comic book, like the pure comic book people have not come into cards, right? Like, there's so many comic book collectors that only collect Silver Age and Golden Age books that are, worth between $10,000 and $200,000, and they take so much pride in them. They still do not care at all about the cards that came out in the 90s, right? So there's a long road ahead. But just like we talked about earlier, there's more people like me. There's more people like us. I do appreciate 90s cards that cost $150, $200, up to $1,500. And those, the populations on those are like 20, 30, 40. And even right now, that's too many for a $1,500 card. But I don't think that's going to remain too many in the long game, which is part of the reason why I'm having so much fun buying them, because I just feel good about it. Like, if a card's $100, it's a PSA 10, I love it. There's 20 of them. I don't mind owning 3 of them. I think it's dope.
I think what's tough is that no kid, or like, other than some of those 90s sets, no kids collected these. So unlike Pokemon, where our original sets, like there could be, like, I don't care what anyone thinks. Those cards are the cards that I collected as a child. They'll always be my favorite card as a child. And so that will always have meaning. No one of one could ever replace that. No rarity.
This is an argument.
Coolest art in the world could ever replace that feeling, right? Now, it doesn't mean that one of one isn't really cool. And I also don't really want it for other reasons. But I think it's like, that's the struggle of the Marvel card market right now. And it's why you saw, like, I have this full set that I bought, I think I have maybe 4 or 5 sets that I bought of this full set. I bought them for like $8 each, $10 each. And then they went to like 1,000, for when this was around the time that Neo, who's great, started talking about Marvel. And it was during this kind of beginning time where it's like the 90s stuff just shot up hugely in price.
I appreciate you guys doing that. I sold a bunch of those boxes for over $1,000 of 90 MU.
I did too, and it's an understanding of like, there's quite a bit of this stuff, and that the reason the pops are so low is because it's never had any value, but actually there's a ton of this stuff out, quite a bit more of a grade. Now there's a lot of centering issues. Some 10s are still remaining low. It doesn't mean they need to have no value. It's the same types of conversations.
But I'm heartbroken at that Stan Lee card. It went from being like a $2,000 10 to like $200, and now there's like so many on the pop.
I know. And so I think it's hard because I think it's very risky to. I just think there's a very wide degree of variance that could happen in these markets. That's my take. Like I can see scenarios
sure.
where these things build and become more popular, like maybe we hope. I can also see scenarios where a number of these cards and items are at the top value that they'll sort of ever be, or near or around the top. I do think that there are some items that I think are going to appeal to more people over a longer period of time or have that sort of history. And I think the way I think about it is like, okay, let's say demand stays about the same as there is right now, but there's 20 new sets every, there's 3-4 sets every year where people have to buy those sets and more money has to keep coming into the hobby. What's the stuff that maybe becomes sort of less popular once it fades from sort of being the new hot thing? And how does that stuff move into like, these are really important things that any fan of the hobby or most fans of the hobby are going to want. And I think over time, when you look at like really long, the comic book market is like so much more established, right? So you see rules that have governed the comic book market with, first appearance, key issues, key events that have happened, right? It's like trying to take these lessons from how those values, and then you had these boom periods in the 90s where like all of these, alternative art covers, people were speculating and spending a lot of money on them. Some of those covers are worth less now than they were in the 90s,
Some are.
while if you had put your money in, Batman #1 or whatever, it's like a $3 million book and maybe it was 30,000-40,000 back then, so it's interesting to see. So there's just so much that could happen. So when we talk about, what we think and how we're speculating, I think that it's, I always repeat that, for people, because I think that I think that, again, if you come at this from, I can afford these items, I love these items, and I see the value, not only does that make it more likely other people will probably feel the same way out there, or there'll be some people who feel the same way, and you're not getting like caught up in sort of, investor sort of speculation hype, but you really will appreciate the item and not need to, forcibly sell it. And that just helps, build the community in the market. And then one question I ask is like, how expensive do these things need to be for us to have fun and enjoy it? Because I think sometimes the money stuff clouds all the other joys of the hobby, because the money stuff is a joy of the hobby, I think. And I don't think we need to say that isn't fun and that isn't like, flipping and trying to make money isn't fun, but there's also a lot of other joy in the hobby, from friendships, relationships, to collecting cool cards that we love. And it's a pleasure to have in our collection, where they go up or down, right? It can sort of overshadow some of that sometimes. So how do you not let it overshadow?
Look, there's economics to it, but for me, if that becomes the focus for the hobby, it changes the nature of me being a part of it. And I get why that's, fun for some people, or well, maybe fun's not like the right word, but like what energizes them to be, I don't know if you can call it collecting, but being in the space where you're buying and selling. But for me, I like to set my focus on what it is I like and what I want to pursue. I love the thrill of the hunt. You're looking at a card here that I specifically sought out to hunt from Spider-Man Metal. I got so much thrill out of acquiring this card, and that to me is a lot of the joy. If I get caught up in, can I buy this price and then sell later for that price? To me, man, that adds a level of stress and anxiety that I don't want as a part of the way I exist in the space. And that's why on my channel, I don't talk about values very much. I've chosen to not do that because I don't want to feed into it. And I want to just focus on what makes the cards fun for me or special to me. And then people can go out and make their own decision on how they want to, enjoy the card the way that they want to enjoy it.
Sure.
To provide a contrast to that, which I want to talk about this card too. This card is incredibly significant on so many levels. I do like the value association with an item, right? But when I'm buying a $200 PSA 10, I don't care if it becomes a $50 PSA 10, right? So I don't care. But I do take pride in having equity in anything that I buy. So higher dollar items, I can't be a retail buyer because I'm always considering what can I sell it for? Not because my primary objective might be to enjoy it, but one day sell it. My objective is not to have all of this stuff 50 years down the line. Like, it's not. It's to enjoy it and then enjoy selling it and then enjoy buying something else I enjoy and maybe years later selling it. So it's very, very important for me, for any high dollar item, to have equity in it, which is why one of my main focuses is seeking out the highest grade raw and grading. Because some of the items that I hunt down, you're a couple $100 into a raw, and then you got an $8,000 9.8, right? You know, those sorts of things. You're instantly in the space of incredible equity. You want to sell it, you want to sell it. The market goes down, the market goes down. But to accomplish that, you have to be hyper focused on the hunt, know what you're looking for, know where you're looking. But now on these cards that, you know, I'm buying for $90 for a PSA 10, $100 for a PSA 10, $200, I'm not too worried about having equity there. Those I'm enjoying having. And if the time, you know, those are cards, someone buys a $2,000 book, they get a free PSA 10. I just like doing that, you know? And so that I have fun with. But the high dollar stuff, I'm always concerned about having equity in it. I don't want to be at a break even, and I don't want to be at a loss. So I have to be very thoughtful in that arena.
And it's all relative, right? Because for one person, $100 is a lot of money. For another person, that's not a lot of money operating in the hobby because they have so much value in their collection and they can easily, you know, recoup that, you know. And then for another person, $15,000 isn't that much. Now there's way less people that's true for, you know, there's not very many people that's true for, and that, you know, you know, but that it is true for some people, you know. And so, and it'll be more true if these hobbies maintain popularity and you have more and more people who, you know, just as Justin said, you know, earlier on in the stream, you know, that most of the wealth is still in the baby boomer generation, and so is in the baby boomer collectibles, and hasn't yet trickled into, you know, as much into whatever collectibles sort of are most popular for you know, people who are in their 30s and 20s and maybe 40s and you know, and someone talks about here, you know, like, will trading cards even be valuable in a digital age? I mean, these are things too that can happen where, you know, cards and these physical items might appeal to us and, you know, for 20 more years, and then they may not appeal to the next generation at all. You know, this is why it's so speculative to invest in assets that do not produce anything.
Oh yeah, you're risking. It's so important to have an emotional satisfaction while you're on this journey, because there's value in that, right? Justin and I have a different sort of an emotional satisfaction, but we're both pursuing an emotional satisfaction, you know? And it's just fortunate for some people that you can be deeply engaged and invested in something that you get emotional satisfaction from and turn a profit. I mean, there's nothing, that's just a beautiful scenario that some people may or may not find themselves in. And to add to, you know, the question of, the way that I heard it is, does the big money sort of take away from the good feelings in the hobby? Someone asked a question, right? And I'm going to address the second part of the question, but it said, Blue Juju said, please correct me if I'm wrong, is the main driver of the current Marvel card market speculators, scalpers, flippers, opportunists, good or bad, seeing how sports cards similarly are thriving? Now, there's a factor of things at play. That's one of the drivers. But what I want to say, just what that question inspires me to say, is there's also people like me. People like me on a large scale. If there's a lot more of me, we will maintain this market on the good, pure, passionate level and the get money level. Literally, both of them are part of my practice day to day. Boxes of stuff I never want to sell. Boxes of stuff I love walking past every day, looking at it and getting that warm hug just from seeing it. And boxes of stuff that I love just as much, but can't wait to sell it to somebody else that loves it just as much and sell it for more than I paid for it. Like, all of those things feed into what I'm doing, but my foundation is love. My foundation is pure. I only like to engage with, sell, hunt something that I love. I can sell all kinds of nonsense for a profit. like someone else said in the chat earlier, in the pandemic, everything went through the roof, but you didn't see me start selling vintage Camaros. I don't really care that much about something that requires so much maintenance. I sold my cars. It was a headache. There's so many. I could have got into luxury watches. I kind of felt like that was even too risky, right? The overhead's crazy. You got to spend $50,000 to get one to sell it for 70,000, you know? You could get into anything when there's opportunity, but I choose to only be where I'm equally as passionate and there's opportunity. So more people like me, we're going to be money minded, but also really guard this thing. See, that's the interesting thing about the Marvel community. We really want to guard it. And so when the Marvel comic book people that I'm trying to get to come into Marvel cards, when they see a modern Marvel card sell for 150,000, then there's a headline, they hate that. They look at that as disgusting, right? They're like, what is this? You guys didn't know squat about Marvel back in the day. Investors are buying cards from investors. It's just that sort of, you know, that's the way that it feels to those collectors of these vintage comic books that love it. There has to be in between to bring them in. But if all they see is the headlines, it turns them off. But it's just over time, it's going to work itself out. You know what I mean? The headlines have slowed down these days. It's not like sales are breaking records right now. So over time, everything finds its place. I think modern will find its place and still, I think, demand a higher price than some of the older stuff. But it's because of the people that are involved in that space. It's just, it has a different mechanism, right? And I think the older stuff will just grow slowly on its own. I just really believe that. And it will get absorbed into a once only comic book collector will over time say, you know, once I slap a comic book, it is basically like a big trading card. It's not like I could open the thing. So if I like the card art and I remember it, I might buy it. I think that will happen personally.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and in Pokemon, there's so many people who love these cards, and the lower the prices get, the more people can actually afford them and buy them and then engage and be part of the hobby and have fun and then be here for a long period of time. So it's you know, what you hate to see is people buying stuff that they don't enjoy and so focused on the dollars that it's like they're not even curious about what the item is. And that's, you know, those are the interactions that, you know, it's not only does it not feel great to see that card go to that person's collection, because it's like they don't really even know what it is, and I don't even feel like they appreciate it like, you know, like you know, this person here. But that's the reality of free markets. You know, if someone's very wealthy, they can buy anything they want. And there are people who know very little, and they literally like I've done consults with people who have spent over $1 million in Pokemon, and they barely knew anything about Pokemon, and they just kind of bought all the best stuff. And they ask people like me and other people sort of what to buy, what's all the best stuff to buy, basically. They don't actually they don't engage in sort of a more deep way to figure out what they think the best stuff is. It's sort of like, let me identify someone who I think is an expert, and and they'll tell me what everyone will think is cool, basically, for me to have the best of everything. You know, it's like that type of thing. And it's sort of like that stuff. You know, when we see that $150,000 headline, you know, 200, that the good thing about that stuff though is that the money is flooding into collectors' hands, because the collectors are the ones who owned that item, who sold it to that person, who now are buying more broadly in the hobby. So one thing
Justin talks about that,
is like the precious metal gem boom. People who a lot of people sold their precious metal gem, made a huge amount of money, and then bought a bunch of broader stuff in the hobby, which helped bring a lot more money into the broader Marvel hobby, which made it a much bigger, more, you know, substantial hobby than it might not have been. So it's they're you know, they're double-edged swords to these things. But it does suck. I mean, having cool, reasonably affordable things while also having a thriving market is a real challenge, because as soon as it's incredibly thriving, it like becomes very expensive, and it's you know, it is what it is.
So. I had to understand, like I stepped in, some things were distasteful to me. You know, I saw the collector investor. I mean, I saw the people that didn't care what it was, but they were like, just tell me what's the hottest. And I was turned off. But then I just had to recognize, it's not, if there's big money, there's always going to be that sort of thing. So they just kind of both exist in their own space, you know, and, you know, What are you going to do? Right? I can't just run around being mad at someone. You got the money, you put it
Yeah.
there. Good for you. And like you said, it was our friends that sold the cards.
Exactly.
What did they do with the money? They bought more stuff they loved, kept the hobby alive. You know,
Exactly.
Justin earlier today was saying something about, you know, if a company puts out, or I don't remember, it was one of you two was um, illustrating a scenario where a card company would release, you know, multiple sets a year. And then one of the things that Justin had said in conversation weeks ago was this idea of, well, when I sell a card, or no, I'll take it like this. When I buy a card from a collector, that money is staying in that environment of collecting. But if I buy $30,000 worth of stuff from Upper Deck, that's just going to go into new stuff coming out. It's not actually staying in this environment of the collectors, you know, spending with each other. I love that ecosystem, but there has
Yeah.
to be both ecosystems and then some overlap. It just yeah.
And I think that, you know, Upper Deck is a part of is obviously creating the hobby. You know what I mean? So, you know, and I do think so. I think that's important. I also think that like all the money that we give to eBay, all the money that we give to auction houses, all the money that we give to trading card companies, right? But like they're also all a really important part of the hobby. But it's an ecosystem that like, you know, when people are calling people out for like taking advantage, like some of that's really good, and then it can go too far. You know what I mean? So like some of it's that sort of that important like, you know, trying to rein any one part of the market being kind of too greedy or taking advantage of another, you know, but that's sort of what those discussions are like. And at the end of the day, it's like, you know, you want Upper Deck to keep making products so we can open have a lot of fun, crack packs. Or more honestly, I can live vicariously through watching Justin.
That's what I'm doing.
Unfortunately,
that's precisely what I do.
I didn't get to open any of that Spider-Man set. Next time that metal comes out, I'm gonna splurge a little bit. But
well, look, that
Jake,
you just spoke
Jake.
to a significant reason why I take the time to hit record. Is I was the kid growing up that even when this stuff was available to kids, like I still couldn't afford it more than a pack or so at a time.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have some sense that there's people who don't have access to the product, whatever that means for them to not have access, that the channel gives them access to it. And if I just enjoy it the way I want to enjoy it, it creates the opportunity for someone else to possibly enjoy it. Yeah. And that is like when I say, hey, everybody, Spidey here, I hope you're having a marvelous day. Like that's the intention of the video, is for someone to have a marvelous day. Marvel Cards just happens to be the way that I'm doing it. And because that's what I enjoy doing.
You know, and that's fascinating. We asked our cards, you know, in the reach of children, maybe not physically, but what you do is create an environment where people of all ages, doesn't matter what they're willing to commit financially, they can enjoy it.
I dream of a world where they might watch the video and then go to Walmart and, you know, buy a $20 box.
Yeah.
Or what if you can just get a pack for $2, Mom, as I go through the register? Like,
hey,
I dream
Spideyhits repacks.
No, that sounds like too much work shipping.
Repacks shouldn't even exist. I know that's controversial for me to say, but repacks are the biggest scam ever. How could you ever trust someone repacking cards? Dude, that's just ridiculous.
I had a lot of fun opening up repacks of Marvel.
Fun is a different story, my friend. Fun is a completely different story. Blue Juju is asking great questions tonight.
You want to pick another one?
It's the most recent one here. Yeah, this is like, we talk about this stuff all the time. I'll read it. Justin, you want to answer it?
It's up to you, man.
All right. What's the best avenue for new returning Marvel card collectors, investors to take? Where are the fairest shops and markets for pre-orders or launch MSRP prices? Does MSRP exist in the Marvel card market? See, Blue Juju, this is a question I had. Like, what is MSRP in this market, Justin?
It does not exist at all, period. There, you know, what Upper Deck sells to the wholesaler and then how that gets to the distributors. I think there's basically 5 major channels that goes through. I could be wrong on that. Maybe it's 7 or something like that, but it's very few. And they get to set the price that they want to sell it for. And they basically will make a limited amount of the product available, see how fast it sells out. If it sells out really fast, then they raise the price, do it again. They keep doing that until it doesn't sell out. And then that's where they find that it's not going to go to eBay immediately. Like they're getting what it would sell for on eBay, basically.
Yeah.
So there's not an MSRP. A lot of like local comic book shops can order the product. Like they may have access to order it. They may say they're going to order a certain amount, and then that order just gets cut because a larger shop chooses to buy more of it. A larger place like Steel City or Dave and Adams or Blowout Cards, someone like that decides to buy more of it.
That feels so nasty to me, man. Like that's not a good feeling.
It's not a good feeling. I just had a case of a WandaVision that I bought at $100 a box because Upper Deck was selling it for $80 a box. That case got canceled because the comic book shop I was ordering from, their order got canceled, and now it's almost $200 a box on Steel City. And so there's not an MSRP. What is the best avenue for new returning Marvel card collectors? The best avenue? I don't know. I don't know. I've given this a lot of thought. It's just different for different types of collectors. And I'm going to speak to the collector side of it first. You need to really narrow in how you want to collect first. Like if you're not careful, you'll find yourself chasing everything as you it's like digging for treasure. You find something new you like, and then you're buying it. You find something new you like, you're buying it, and then you're spread too thin. So I would really narrow your collection. Is it going to be a certain set, a certain insert, a certain character? So I do that first. From an investor take, that was tough.
It's tough, man.
Yeah, and I may not even be the best person to ask. I think the true blue advice continues to be, if you love it, somebody else might love it. And you got to do your research on kind of where you think that price may be at today versus where it may be at tomorrow. But I don't know. I don't do a lot of the investor talk, so I can't speak to that. But I think
it's tricky. It's a touchy one.
It's a touchy one because, well, frankly, I've made a lot of money selling Marvel cards without a particular formula. Like I've just been very fortunate, and I don't know how to tell you to be fortunate.
Timing is a big part of that.
Yeah,
timing is a big part of that, though. Yeah.
Yeah. How can I tell you to be blessed? Like, and good luck, and I hope the timing works out for you. Like you've got to be the right place, buying at the right time, and selling at the right time. Like that's hard to build a particular formula around with something like Marvel cards. It's not like Pokemon. I don't think, where there's much more of it, and you can track and move and do and that kind of thing.
Well, I think everything, right, is supply and demand. And when they're, to the point where I apologize if I just cut you off a bit, but to your last point, one thing that can be easier in Pokemon versus your one of ones, right, to the extreme, is there's just a lot more comps, which I think is what you're about to say. There's a lot more price history, there's a lot more, range, but not for everything. And we have plenty of trophy cards and cards that have never sold publicly. Not plenty. We have a few cards that have never sold publicly, not very many, but and then we have a lot more cards that maybe sell publicly twice a year or something, but maybe not at the grade that you're particularly selling, So but all these things are supply and demand. And so when you're thinking about investing or speculating, it's all about, trying to figure out, are people is the demand going to increase in the future from where it is now? Is the supply going to decrease? Is there going to be attrition over time, or is there less supply than people realize? And then that's going to
What is attrition? 1 second. I'm sorry. What's the word attrition mean?
Like wearing down, like
damaged, thrown out, destroyed.
Oh, okay. Oh, I got you. Oh, okay. Does it deteriorate over time for any number of reasons? Okay.
Yeah. So like when people don't sleeve stuff or don't grade stuff or don't keep it in good condition, it's unlikely to grade a PSA 9 or PSA 10 in a number of years, these types of things. So they're sort of this natural.
I love that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of it, right? I mean, nobody knows. And obviously it depends. I mean, the higher the value an item is right away, the less attrition you think there's probably going to be. So it's why you see things, like Action Comics #1 is a phenomenal example. There was actually a massive, Superman was very popular, and there for the time period, there's a massive amount of that comic book actually printed, but it wasn't investable. There wasn't any investing for 30
It's like
years.
saving a newspaper.
Yeah, exactly. So because of that, the attrition rate was huge.
Attrition rate is my favorite thing in collecting. That is what the principle I put my flag in and stand on.
So often, ironically, investing in things that are not very popular, but then or are very popular, but people don't view as an investment, that can work extremely well. So it's like, this is extremely popular. Why is no one investing in this? There isn't going to be enough of it. No one thinks it's valuable. Those things may become valuable. But then you can find examples of where that isn't true. Something like Beanie Babies, which was extraordinarily popular, but there was also an extraordinary amount of them. That has not, the grading of Beanie Babies has not been able to take something, and will it ever? Maybe, but it's like, they're just.
But it was spec day one almost. That's what makes it a little bit different. Like, it was spec day one. Like, there was that false rarity value thing right from day one.
There was like the bears and stuff. Yeah.
I think one thing that makes it difficult for me to kind of take the stance of like talking about Marvel cards from an investment or even asset standpoint is because my job, my profession is giving financial advice, but it's in the realm of real property, which you can speak to why it's valuable and why it will be valuable in the future, to use your words. Like, it has the utility. Like, it's not just something that you enjoy looking at or whatever. It has a production aspect to it.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult for me to like go into that mental shift of like, here's why this has value, and this is why it's going to go up in the future, and this is why it's going to have demand in the future that's going to equate to this being what it might sell for in the future. Like, that's really tough for me. I think that you've got to approach it in a way of here's what I'm after. This is what aligns for me, what I want to collect. Here's what I can budget. Here's what I can afford. And kind of take those type of principles that you build for yourself as a buyer. And then timing has to play out. Like, you've got to sell at the right time. Like, you can't just sell at any time. Like, that's a huge part of it.
The interesting to like everyone approaches investments differently, and just like we were talking about value, money is relative. What's a lot, what's not a lot, so on and so forth. Generally, when I think about like cards and just collectibles in general, I don't necessarily think of it as a primary investment. People throw around the phrase alternative investment. I don't know what it means like when an institution uses the phrase, but when I hear that phrase, what that means to me is, once you're established enough financially where you have some of those like blue chip sort of investments, if property is your thing, maybe property, or you're diversified in terms of like the sort of stock that you own, whatever it is, you have those where the financial advisors will tell you this is an investment. And then once you've had that sort of established, you feel comfortable there, you know what you're doing, so on and so forth, and you're at a level where you got some extra money. Well, that now you start to decide, well, what do I want to do with this money? And I don't look at it like fun money or play money. It's not fun to lose money. But that's the space. Cards and stuff for me are in the space where they are investable, but the risk is incredibly high, where no one that's licensed to advise you on investments would advise you to buy Marvel cards, right? But if you personally view it as an investment, you can withstand the risk. You put in 50 grand, it might turn into 20 grand. You don't care because that was that thing for you and you enjoy having it, sort of. Like, that's the nuance of that investment for me. Like, that's how it feels. Like, it's an alternative asset class, if you want to call it that, right? Yeah. But I do think it exists as an investment, but just like Justin's saying, can't compare it to property,
Yeah, for me, I have no problem. Like, the reason I worry about saying the word investing is because I worry that people aren't thoughtful out there. So they hear the word investing and then they do things that I would be concerned about them doing, right?
Yeah.
But like, for me, I have no problem at all with the word investing. I am investing in cards to some degree, but I am very clear what a productive asset and what a non-productive asset is. And I'll explain it very quickly for people. A productive asset, if I buy a business, Now, I could sell that business to someone else for more money, which is like having a card, the same card, and then selling that card for more money, right? In that way, it's similar. But what else does a business do? A business
Producing income.
something that I can then sell while I own the business that gives me income constantly. Okay. If you own property, you get rent, you know. So there's the someone will pay me more for this in the future element of it, which is what is similar to whatever, if you want, a crypto or fine art or gold or any commodity or cards, it's all the same in that sort of sense. Now, what I love about cards as an investment is it's a very non-optimized space where someone with a lot of engagement and passion and skill can make a lot of money. If they
non-optimized space, meaning big companies haven't,
where like it's like I can buy something for $500 tonight and sell it for $1,000 tomorrow. Is a great example of something that's very not optimized in terms of, it's not just like everyone knows the value of everything and everyone knows the history of everything. It's like, if I have a ton of passion and I become very well educated and I know what things are selling for really well, and I have places where I buy something and then places where I sell something, and I know the market very well. And then I also have strong convictions like, you know what, I think this card should be worth a lot more than it is. And I think in a few years from now, when more people hear about it or know about it, and I think more people are going to know about it because A, B, C, and D, I think there are reasons why the demand might increase. I think it's going to go up, and I think that it's very undervalued right now, right? And I have no problem with that, as long as you understand that it is a non-productive asset that could be stolen from you, that is not making you any money, and could get damaged or destroyed, and is very illiquid and hard to sell. And so even if the price of that item on the market is $10,000 to $15,000 or whatever, are you going to be able to find a buyer? How long is it going to take you to find the buyer? And then the fees and the taxes you're going to pay on it. It's like, if you know all those elements of it, and there's still, and you still view it as an investment, I have no problem, because I think you still can invest, because I do think that having skill and engagement in the hobby and maybe some instincts can still make you outperform. You could still outperform productive assets and investments in these non-productive hobbies. You just have so much going against you that unless you're insanely passionate, just put your money in productive assets that are so much easier, so much more liquid, make you like very guaranteed money, and you'll be in great shape in 20 to 30 years from now with like a good, you know, it just makes no sense from a risk reward sort of analysis. That's my first feel on all of it.
Jake, that was so spot on. Like a couple of those things, like that's really true. Like, you could just go into the standard investment and do fine. If you're not insanely passionate, you're not going to take the time to educate yourself to the point where you have the edge, invest the time it takes to, you know, find something on a platform underpriced where there weren't enough eyes on it, and you've built a platform somewhere else where people are engaging with you to see what you have, and you're able to sell it to them on the premium. Basically, you're the value. You create the value with the education, the edge that you have, right? Sure. That was and so that's so spot on. And then the other thing that I do talk about often, but I forgot this evening, and you just brought it up, which I love. Let's say you did buy everything correctly. Let's say everything went up in value. Sure. But what if you have 1,000 things and you never put together a platform to sell or establish a network to sell? The amount of time and effort it takes, you might not have any profit, even if everything doubled in price. Stock, you press a button, it's gone. A house you listed for sale might take a couple of months, but hundreds of thousands of dollars is generated in one transaction. If you got 1,000 of something, they're worth $2,000 a piece. You don't press a button and all of a sudden you've got however many dollars that equates to. 200,000. I have no idea what that is. You know, and so that amount of effort that it takes removes it from the space of a reasonable investment, because now you actually have to execute the turnaround, turn it into cash. Oh, yeah. Love it.
Yeah. So the upside would have to be humongous, basically, you know, in most cases, you know, for it to make sense as a serious investment, meaning like this is my primary way that I'm going to like grow wealth for my family and myself, or generational wealth, or if you're a fire movement person of like, I want financial freedom so I can quit my job. It's like, if you're serious about that stuff, like really understanding the differences between productive and non-productive assets, and like, and not letting your love for this stuff, you know, I think unfortunately, right, people can use it as a rationalization of like, you know, I'm really overspending on stuff I love because it's a really good investment, or these types of things. And I think that it's listen, a lot of people who watch this channel, frankly, are so deep in these hobbies that like I would trust them way more over the average like, you know, person who's new in a hobby, to like know what to buy and to not probably overspend on you know what I mean? So it's, when you're giving advice, it really depends on the person you're talking to, and why we do not give financial advice on this channel, and nor should any, even though theoretically we can, because these are not securities. So I can sit here and say anything I want legally, but it's like, it's so irresponsible, is because every person out there is in a completely different financial position and has a completely different skill set in terms of their ability to understand and know this market. And so, you know, there's just the one size, you know, why financial advisors exist is they tailor very individual financial plans to individuals who talk about their exact incomes and exactly what their goals are in their life, and, you know, exactly what risk and reward they're comfortable with. It's not a form that
Where
works.
does this guy Jake come from? Where does this guy Jake come from with all this understanding and rationale? Where did it come from, Jake? I like this.
Yeah.
We're in the Pokemon market here.
You guys are smart over here in the Pokemon market.
For me, Marvel cards is at the end of my balance sheet. It means that, you know, I'm at a place in my life where, after taking care of my obligations, my family, my savings, my giving, there was still some money left over, and I'm having a fun time. And, you know, by God's grace, I've been able to sell enough of these cards that it's allowed me to acquire more cards that, you know, is now kind of feeding itself a bit. To me, that's where it lives for me.
So Blue Jay just asked me if I'm invested in Marvel cards, comics, and toys, and I would say no. The cards that I own in Marvel, I did not buy, and I don't think that they're particularly like optimized great investments. I think that the Donruss stuff, I like, and do I think it could go up over time? For sure. But I don't think the risk reward, just to be completely honest, makes sense on those. Whereas to be completely blunt, there are some Star Wars cards and there's some other things that I'm buying that I actually think have maybe a better risk reward sort of like investment thing. But I'm a collector of both Star Wars and Marvel, but I have a little bit more of an investor. So for me, it's like I can separate those things inside my head of like what's motivating me, right? Am I more motivated by like trying to make money right now, or am I more motivated by, I think these items are freaking cool and I can afford them, right? And so, you know, all that being said, you know, I also never buy things that I think are overvalued or crazy overvalued ever, pretty much, because there's always another cool thing to get. So when I buy Marvel stuff, I also don't think it's like overvalued particularly. I think it's like I'm getting joy at those prices. I see the value at those prices. I would never buy anything Marvel or anything else that I felt, you know, was way overpriced. These are just physical things at the end of the day. Do we really need any of them? No. You know, I mean, you know, so it's sort of like, you know, I don't have an obsession or addiction to the point where it's like, I must have any item. It's more like, I think that item's sweet. And it's like, it feels like it's a pretty good price. Like, you know, is how I tend to be governed by. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, I can get with that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's see. How you guys doing? You feeling still energetic, or should we wind down?
Oh, I can go. I mean, no, it's always up to whomever else, because I will stay as long as the stream is going, and I'll talk as long as someone's talking about something. You know?
I'm probably getting closer to the end. I just yawned and saw that it was 11 o'clock.
So why don't we
see, that's what usually happens.
We've been going for like 2 hours and 45 minutes roughly. Why don't we just like go for another 15 minutes? If that's cool, Justin.
Perfect.
If people have more questions, if you guys want to, we'll do some. And I think we definitely skipped some questions here, so I can go up a bit.
Yeah, I know that I saw that I didn't get to quite a couple of questions.
Like how does how does Upper Deck come up with the e-pack
Um,
pricing? These types of things are interesting for
I
sure.
can't speak like super specific to that because they've never given out their formula, but I think it's a couple of different things. They generally are never going to be the same price that the physical boxes are at the time of release. Uh, Here lately, they've seemed to be $150 cheaper than whatever the box price was. So if the box price was, $650, then they're going to be at, 500, that kind of thing. But they're trying to figure out a price point that has the product not sell out in 2 or 3 days. That's ultimately what they're trying to determine. They want the product to sell out on e-pack, but they don't want it to happen in a very, very short period of time. Last year when Marvel Masterpieces 2020, it came out in 2021, February of 2021, it sold out in 6 days. Spider-Man Metal was just recently came out, sold out in less than 30 days. And there's other factors into that, but ultimately I think they're just trying to figure out a way to keep you on their platform every day as often as possible for, weeks at a time.
Anything to add on that one?
Well, the other thing I
got
would add
nothing.
is that there are digital cards and that affects the pricing as well. Where, obviously with hobby boxes, you're getting all physical, obviously, but it does create a price variance of what they will charge because of the digital aspect. But more and more and more of Upper Deck is moving their product to e-pack, and they're reducing the percentage of how much of the product is going to hobby boxes. That's been the trend.
Okay.
Oh, this is a good question, and I think that
you
I
want to
agree
take
with
this one?
what the sentiment is there.
So thoughts on Weiss Schwartz?
I'm not too. Yeah.
Just for people who are just listening, thoughts on Weiss Schwartz making another Marvel set and the connection with TCG consumers. I felt like it drew in more Pokemon collectors to Marvel collecting than anything else.
I'm happy
kind
to
of
speak
agree.
to it. Oh, go ahead, Manu.
Oh, please. No, I was just going to say, I agree from my purview, from the people that I've communicated with, it did not convert the other way around. It was more people from, the TCG world showing some of their TCG Marvel cards, right? And I was like, what is this? It didn't happen the other way around for me. I didn't find the Marvel TCG stuff and find myself in the world of Pokemon and things. It was introduced to me in the reverse. So that's why I sort of agree with that sentiment. But Justin, what was your
It certainly did that. I mean, I wouldn't say
experience
at a like super high level, but it definitely drew in some Pokemon collectors, and it opened up Marvel card collectors to the world of TCG. And thoughts on them making another set? I mean, I think it did really well, so I think they probably would. But what it did for Marvel card collectors is Upper Deck. Like Upper Deck actually didn't release very much this year in terms of new sets. I mean, we got Into the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man Metal, and Annual, and that was it. So Weiss Schwartz filled a gap there for a little bit that we were really grateful for.
Blue Juju with another great comment. Justin, I think you're going to like this latest one here.
One thing I would just to because I wouldn't mind touching on this one quickly, and then we can jump to that one. I think the TCG thing is an interesting thing. How many people out there just collect TCGs and are only not interested in Marvel or Star Wars because they're not TCGs? And so it's just interesting, and why they like the IPs. And so Weiss Schwartz, which is a TCG, allows them to sort of that it fits their collecting, but going outside of TCGs would be too much. Because I know a number of guys right now are like getting into Weiss Schwartz and Yu-Gi-Oh! In particular from, people that I hang out with in the hobby, instead of jumping into Marvel or Star Wars or some of the, and it's because of the TCG thing. So it's just,
if they would do original art for Marvel on TCG, it would be a much bigger deal to us.
Yeah. Do you, so you would like it better too?
Yes,
Me?
it would.
Oh.
Yeah. Or either of you. Yeah.
Manu?
Oh yeah. I just haven't spent that much time with it. I've seen a few cards that look really cool, but I wait for an emotional reaction. That's all. And that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the Marvel TCG. There was other stuff that came out, Japanese style cards that I can't think of the names right now for whatever reason. That again filled a void this year because we didn't have new product for months and months and months and months. But if they did original art on there, art that we couldn't find anywhere else, I definitely think more current modern Marvel card collectors would go after it.
I think TCGs brings in, obviously there's a playability aspect, and there are some people who there's an interesting sort of thing where it's like players aren't collectors, but it's like there's going to be a certain amount of people that can be players and collectors and enjoy both. For myself, though, I don't really care if it's a TCG or not that much. I think I have a respect for TCGs because it's a big part of card history. And I actually collect like revolutionary, like playing cards and like really old, like I have a respect for sort of games. I like games and I like card games and things like that. So I certainly enjoy it. But from an art perspective, like it doesn't, having text on the card or having, rules and what the card is going to do doesn't necessarily add anything for me from that perspective. And I like this stuff too for art. So I don't, and in Pokemon too, there are a lot of very expensive cards that are not part of the TCG in Pokemon, actually, that are tops made cards that are fairly expensive back in 2000, around 2000. And before the Pokemon game came to the US in 1996, there were some, or around the same time, really, because it was all 1996. But there was a 1996 set, a 1995 set that isn't actually from 1995. It just says that on the card. And then in 1997 and 1998, Meiji Chocolate came out with some sets. Bandai, Topsoon. I'm throwing names that you guys.
I never heard Meiji. I was like, Meiji.
I know Bandai.
Yeah, if you're ever interested in Pokemon, I could give you a sort of rundown on pretty much everything that we've got going on. But there's a lot of niche stuff that is not a game. And that stuff is really loved by Pokemon collectors. So it's collecting. And I do think it goes to something Justin said earlier, like about staying, like you can become overwhelmed if you don't have a niche.
Yeah.
And so it can be for some people, it's like, I think those cards are sick, Justin, but like, I wouldn't even know where to begin. And it's like, I already have my hands full with Pokemon. And I think that is like a totally reasonable, reaction. And I think it's sort of like over time, though, when you see these other cool things that are out there, it plants seeds, I think. And there might be times where it makes more sense, or you're tired with something where you want to do something else. And that's what I like to do, is just show cool stuff and let people know what's out there. And I think that it helps you better value what Pokemon cards should be valued at. I study all these markets in large part so I can better kind of gauge, is our Pokemon market relatively over expensive or or underpriced compared to some of these other markets. So from a market perspective too, I think it's important to understand what's going on and the psychology of these other markets to better gauge our market. Juju's question: fondest memory in the Marvel universe? Movie, TV, comic, card, toy. Mine was the 90s X-Men TV series, the story of outcasts finding a place and purpose in life.
That's a difficult question.
It's a good one.
Tremendous amount of memories. I think growing up, the thing I probably enjoyed the most was running home. It was fourth grade. Parents had just divorced. And me and my twin brother would race home from school to get there in time for Spider-Man to start in the afternoons. And just loved that show. Loved the X-Men. I remember the first time I watched them, I was in Texas on a Saturday morning. A friend of mine was like, "Let's watch this," and put it on. You had to be in front of the TV at the right time. Like there was no recording it or rewinding it or anything like that. Like you have one chance during the week to watch it, and being able to watch it, be there at the right time. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, there's a ton of memories we could go on throughout the night.
I love it.
Continue to go through them.
I actually just remembered that I used to record the cartoons. That means there's a box of VHSs somewhere with Spider-Man from 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning. You know, I remember watching the intro of Spider-Man still half sleep, you know, because like nothing
Uh-huh.
will get you out of bed as a kid until it's 30 seconds before the show is going to turn on. You absolutely have to. You're trying to adjust to the light in real time. Like no cereal. I'm just in front of the TV now, fresh out of bed, adjusting to the light. I remember that very much. One of my favorite memories is it might have been Christmas of 95 or Christmas of 94. I tell the story often. It was a box of 1994 Flair. It was an unopened box. My parents had gotten it for me for Christmas. We used to have a room in the house where you didn't really go into, you know, but that's where the tree was in Christmas. All the furniture was white. And I
A
remember
formal
opening
room.
that. Yeah, we called it the white room,
Yeah.
you know, and I just remember it because I used to love, you know, Christmas is just an amazing time of year. I just really like it. Like obviously we come from an Indian family. We just celebrate these things because they're just like really cool, like great vibes sort of in the world. We didn't know the traditions of anything. We're like Christmas trees and lights. We love Christmas. Let's go, you
Yeah.
know. Every holiday was just a fun time and gifts. And it was Christmas morning, 94 Flair. I remember opening it up, using the white table to put, you know, card number 1 over here, leave enough space for when I pull card number 7, you know, and that's just one of my favorite memories of all time. And man, just really love those memories. So yeah,
That's
there's
awesome.
quite a few tied into this stuff, which is why we are so deeply passionate here, and which is why
Yeah.
it's such a huge blessing to be able to profit from this stuff. Profit is not bad. This is a could be a business on a certain scale. Doesn't have to be, but even as something that you could get in and out of and not lose money, I just think that's incredible. But like everything we discussed today, you have to do that carefully. You know, you have to do it very carefully, and it's different for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I see they're talking about Marvel Snap in the chats. I think Marvel Snap's important. Could have some influence on the way things are viewed in the future. That Marvel Snap is digital cards as you're playing against one another in a TCG format. You know, with the popularity that currently has and the scale that's continued to grow into, the expansions that they're looking at making right now for that, it's hard not to believe that at some point there's going to be additional profit that's want to be made on that on Marvel Snap. That's not just in the game. And it'd be really curious to see how that might convert into a Marvel card or into a TCG.
Yeah.
So why don't we wrap it up there?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you both so much for hanging out and spending time here. I thank you in the chat for hanging out. I know that this is not the we talk about here, and you know we had a smaller audience than usual, which is to be expected, and you know because it's most people here are for more of the Pokemon content, but I
Yeah.
really appreciate those who stayed and engaged.
Yes, very
And
much. Thank you.
you know, and some of you guys I think are into Marvel, but other people are just like, you know, I'm along for the ride and wanted to learn something new. So
Yeah.
appreciate you
Yeah. I
guys
appreciate it.
hanging out.
Thanks, everybody.
And definitely go check these guys out. You know, the 9.9 Newsstand on Instagram.
Yes,
And
thank you so much.
you can also catch him on Spideyhits channel, which I will link below. Once a week, guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me and Manu together, it's once a week, Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Same time as we did the show tonight. And I do a live on Saturday morning called the Saturday Morning Marvel Cards show, which we have a lot of fun with that. And then I generally edit a video or two a week, either related to the news or me opening up a box of cards or something, you know, of that nature.
And
There's nobody that's going to inform you better than Justin on what's going on in Marvel cards. That's
Well,
a guarantee.
yeah,
I appreciate that. I'd like to think we're going to have a good time. There's definitely plenty of people that know more about Marvel cards than me, for
And he's a
sure.
modest man.
They're just not all hitting record. So don't
You
worry,
know,
I talked to them.
and to me, like I'm just someone who like I'm a big supporter of just people in the card spaces in general. I want cards to, you know, succeed and be great. And I think it's like, you know, supporting people who have similar interests to you. And it's Skippy FX. We
That's
love
hilarious.
to listen to him shilling anything. Yeah.
I love that.
um,
That's the greatest compliment ever. You
Yeah.
need a t-shirt that says that.
um, but yeah, and I really hope that I hope you guys I want to convince you guys to come to some shows and some conventions and to start, and I want to see Marvel cards and other cards at some of the things we go to. And I think that and it is zero, honestly, because I'm trying to raise the price of Marvel cards at all. I don't own any any valuable ones to raise. It's totally just about that. I think that there are a lot of cool people who, would it be sick if you guys like Pokemon and understood Pokemon? Like, obviously it'd be a whole other area to talk about. But I just think that there are some really cool groups happening. Like, I think your Discord and thank you to Swami, because like if it hadn't really been for Swami, I wouldn't know any of you guys or been introduced.
Swami's amazing.
But there's just a lot of great guys out there, and we shouldn't unnecessarily keep our communities or groups too small just because we're not into the exact same collectible. Sort of my feeling on it. So hopefully others agree, and thanks again, both of you for coming on. Any last word, or I'll give you guys the floor and then we'll wrap it up.
You first and then me, Manu.
I just want to say thank you, Jake. During like this last couple of minutes, I've been thinking I'm not used to being on YouTube, but I'm starting to get like used to, like, every Tuesday for 35 weeks, you get familiar. But it's not lost on me that it still feels really special that both of you, like, first Justin has invited me, and now, because of what we've done for 35 weeks, you've extended an invitation onto your show. And that's just super special to me. So I just want to say thank you for that. Like, that's just, so I just want to say thank you. Justin, Jake, thank you. And everyone that was with us tonight. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah. Jake, big thanks. Really enjoyed it. I watch your show. I'm not into Pokemon. I still watch your show because you're talking about Pokemon, but there's a certain intellect about you that, I can learn from, even though it's not Marvel. And I really appreciate that. Superman can outrun the Flash. If Flash ever beats Superman, that's in the comments, it's because he's being too nice. Superman is Superman, period. In a discussion. And with that, like collecting, the most valuable part of collecting is people. People are the most valuable part. That if I don't ever want to lose sight of that, I feel like if I lose sight of that, then I'll lose everything. And so that's my encouragement to everyone out there that, yes, cards are important. There's a lot attached to it, but it's the people that's the most valuable.
Yeah, I think it was a funny line. The most important part of collecting is the people. I imagine you starting to sell off your collection and starting to collect people.
I would trade my cards for Manu any day of the week. It's not.
Aww.
I love you, man.
I love you, brother. That's really nice, man.
So we'll have to do this again, or find other ways to hang out in person, online, whatever, in front of people, not in front of people. But thank you both, and thanks everyone again in the chat. We'll end
everybody.
it there.
Thanks.